Boom! What's up, fam? Anthony Dream Johnson here today, co-founder and CEO of the Redman Group, founder of 21 Studios, 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 University, and 10,000 other things. Today, I have on with me the show. Well, first of all, it's episode 134 of the Redman Group, Surviving the New Woke Order. And I'll be joined today by alumni speakers of the 21 Convention and returning guests to the Redman Group, Piero San Giorgio, if I'm saying that correctly, and Mr. Jack Donovan, and most likely, but we'll see, Richard Grannon, from Spartan Life Coach. So without further ado, please let me welcome back to the show, Mr. Piero and Jack Donovan. What's up, boys?
Hello.
Thanks for coming back on the show. Appreciate both your opportunities and time today, attention. Where are you both based out of right now? What's going on in the world geographically for you both?
In Switzerland right now.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Cool. And obviously I'm out here in Utah.
Nice. Yeah, we're talking about that.
States like Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the last free states.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's been going on? What's new for both of you? Well, actually, before we get into what's new for both of you, so not everyone on the show is going to know you guys. Number one is Jack Donovan is a prolific manosphere author with the manosphere classic, The Way of Men, Becoming a Barbarian, all available on Amazon, by the way. A More Complete Beast, which is also a 21 Convention speech, very similar to the book. Check it out. And of course, his all-new book, Fire in the Dark, Men and Gods. I just got this. Very excited to start reading it. I did actually read a couple chapters so far. I skipped right to George Washington, which I'm also on the George Washington kick.
It's all about George Washington, man.
Yeah. Piero is also a prolific author. He's the number one survivalist type or genre author in all of Europe. I think one of his first books is Survive the Economic Collapse. It's a very big book, very thick. I've had this since 2019 when I met Piero and he spoke at 21 Convention. He's also the author of several other books, including CBRN, which focuses and details the coronavirus, other types of collapses outside of economic collapse, and many other books here, a lot of which have been translated. Piero also translates through one of his businesses, books like Jack Donovan's, into other languages like French, I think, and Italian, and many other things. So make sure to check that out on Amazon, all their books. They're very rich and detailed and full of knowledge. So now that the super duper author introduction, and being an author is hard, man. I really respect that both of you do that at such depth too and length. These books are massive. These are like tomes, especially when put together.
Yeah.
But what have you both been up to now in the new year of 2021, our new woke order that we're entering? Piero, if we could start with you.
Well, as you know, when you talk about economic collapse, you have to take into account the social collapse, and social collapse starts with fundamental decadence on everything that you are supposed to believe: politics, even science, certainly morals. Everything collapses in dying empires, and we are living the death of the American empire today. And not surprisingly, just like in Byzantium before, just like in Rome, the last years or decades see a massive collapse of everything that holds society together, except the economy, which is the last thing that eventually falls down like a castle of cards. So I'm not surprised to see this. In fact, I didn't have to predict it, but I mentioned it in all my books for the last decade, that we would eventually see collapsing structures, which paradoxically will try to strengthen themselves through some sort of dictatorial tendencies, which is also quite funny in a way, because dictatorial tendency in a woke world and with much weaker military and police than what Rome could do, for example, makes it for a very strange paradox in the sense that you have military veterans, for example, in America being mostly conservative, facing a dictatorship of woke, pink-haired, progressive people. And I'm not really sure if the latter are really figuring out or understanding the kind of catastrophe they are going towards. Nonetheless, the question remains for people like you and me and most of our audience is, what can you do? And I think that people like Jack Donovan, indeed, and many others have a very important part, and I hope myself as well, have important parts of the puzzle, which is not just about beans, bullets, and gold and all that classical survivalist thing that you want to have to gain autonomy, to gain resilience, to have this ability to withstand the collapse of government, of the economy, and so on. There is a very important part which is inside your head, how you think about yourself, how you believe that, because your freedom is inside your head, it's not outside. Real freedom is inside. And this is where the progressives are frustrated, because they can't get in your head. Or at least they try, but if you are strong, there's no way you can get in unless you are sent to re-education camps.
I was going to say that it's really interesting you mentioned that, because that's what it feels like. They're always trying to get in your head and control how you think by controlling how you speak,
Sure.
controlling what access of information you have and knowledge, banning books like we're seeing, burning books digitally, movies, even like Gone with the Wind was, modified by HBO, all kinds of really weird Orwellian, Brave New World type stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all a method of controlling how you think, right?
Yes, and because that's what totalitarian regimes want. Indeed, you mentioned Orwell, 1984. The name of the game is to enter in your head and control how you think. And obviously, you would do it through language changes, through cultural changes. And, the reality of the world is that no one has ever managed to change how Mormons think. And you have religions, for example, in Jack's new books, I'm eager to read it, but certainly it shows how religious thought is so important to keep a culture. Look at how Jewish culture survived through 2,000 years of exodus and diaspora, and finally managed to recreate its country through many means of influence and physical action and funding. And we have to take a lot of learning from all of these examples through history. But indeed, the end game of these sick people who want to control others, because probably they have inability to control their own pulsions and thoughts and whatever motivates them to be who they are, probably they have a psychological problem. I'm sure Richard Grannon can tell us a lot about that when he joins us. But certainly, this willingness is very important. But the good news is that there's only one thing that protects you, and it's a very easy thing that protects you from people trying to enter your mind, and it's one simple word, which is no.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and how in America in particular, as well as throughout the West, one of maybe the core things we've lost is the ability to say no. Absolutely. At every level. Like, in the manosphere, you talk about this with women. If you don't know how to say no, you're going to have problems with women. And on top of that, if you learn how to say no, women really, really love that. It drives them wild. They love it. They get lustful and crazy, and they fall in love with you for short or long term or whatever. But that word no is like absolute candy to them. And now they're fat in other ways and fat on these sweets, but the one sweet they don't have is the word no. And then, of course, that goes into things like borders and culture and language. These barriers are all being broken down. And if Richard Grannon were here, he would talk, I think, about boundaries, but a boundary is just a barrier, a wall,
Yeah.
Before we get into Jack Donovan here with especially his new book, as well as his whole body of work, Pierre, can you talk to me a little bit more about, you mentioned it feels like the whole West, earlier in your kind of the monologue you went on, you mentioned how everything is kind of under attack. It's not just one thing. It's not just like politics. It's not just culture. It's not just language. It's not just the movies. It's not just TV. It feels like everything is under attack. Masculinity, femininity, women, men, at least women who want to be women and enjoy being women, things like that. Gender is under attack. It feels like there's almost nothing not under attack that's important in the West. Do you agree with that? And can you expand on the totality of what we're seeing, the comprehensiveness?
Yes, it is. Everything, as you mentioned, is under attack, and it's under attack worldwide. Obviously, in some more traditional cultures, like in the Muslim world, for example, it will take longer for this attack to enter. But it is nonetheless going on even there. It is taking longer in civilizations like China or perhaps in Russia, but it is still, this attack is ongoing. The reason I called my first book Survive the Economic Collapse and not just survive something else is that all these sorts of attacks on reality, because There is a biological reality about being a man, being a woman. There is a biological reality about how you are performant, how you are efficient in a company, for example, or in business. When you destroy that reality, you don't replace it with something else that is efficient or profitable or productive. You destroy what enables the wealth of the world that itself makes possible that sort of weird, non-productive thought patterns and decadence. Therefore, they are destroying what makes themselves possible. And of course, this is a system that when it collapses, auto-eliminates all these woke, progressive, and all this goes away. Believe me, there were not progressive people in Rome after it fell. There were no progressive people after Constantinople after it fell. There were not many woke and progressive people after the Soviet Union collapsed or when Yugoslavia fell into civil war. You don't have time for such things. You have to survive every day, because this is the way of, some American authors wrote about the forced turning. And there are fundamental laws, maybe they're not laws of physics, but there are laws of sociology, of anthropology, which, in fact, Jack Donovan speaks very well in The Way of Man. What makes a society function is strong men united in a tribe. And, of course, they will bring women along, because women eventually want to be around men who are successful, who provide comfort and who provide civilization. And when the rest is barbarian, and I say this in the way Romans would say barbarians, in the sense that, in the more colloquial sense of the term, when you have barbaric practices collapsing in a collapsing society, all the smart people, they will just drop all this nonsense and will go back to where you can create something. So, in fact, I'm very hopeful. In fact, I'm extremely enthusiastic. In a paradoxical way, of the world we're entering, because it was inevitable that it would happen. It's inevitable now that it will collapse, for sure. There's no way out. It may not collapse everywhere, of course. I don't see Russia collapsing unless there's a nuclear war. I don't see more traditional societies collapse. They will probably just revert back to a more primitive state, but it won't change much for them. I do, however, see Western Europe and North America on the brink of a massive collapse and massive depopulation. This is inevitable consequence. And so this is why we need to prepare ourselves physically, of course. And this is not new. The prepping movement, the survivalists have done this for years. I didn't bring anything new in that regard. However, preparing yourself mentally, preparing yourself with a strategy, preparing yourself with a group of people around you. And indeed, The Way of Man and Jack Donovan's work is paramount to read on this, on how you create a tribe, or at least you get yourself in the process of doing that as soon as you can, how you create a community of men. Because this is what is going to survive. This is what is going to withstand. All civilizations go through these cycles of creation, destruction, and what remains is strong group of men, and whether they are bound by friendship and skills, or whether they're bound by powerful beliefs, even if we may consider some religious beliefs backward, it doesn't matter. If it's a plus for your survival in an evolutionary sense, it's good. So I'm in fact quite hopeful that evolution is back, and it's going to kick us in the ass pretty strong, and it will be tough for the weak and for the not unprepared. But what can I tell you? This has been the way of mankind, or womankind. I don't know what's the political term now. We have a woman, brother. Well, it's gonna go back to normal very, very quickly. The only thing is that it's not going to be super nice. It's going to be painful, but it's through pain that we learn. It's through hardships that we grow, and it's inevitable. So we just need to get prepared. At least that's my point of view.
Yeah, it's a dark prophecy, but I can't disagree. And these are my exact same, not only thoughts, but things I've been thinking about in terms of probability and possibilities. And I don't think you're wrong. You could be, I guess there's a slim chance, but I don't think so. I think this is where things are heading. I'm hoping for the best, for America, my country. I love it very much, but I'm also preparing for the worst. because I think that's a very real possibility. In fact, it's probably the most likely at this point. We've been talking with Piero here for a while. Jack, let's move on to you a little bit. We've heard a lot about you from Piero. Fuck yeah. I'm thinking about all kinds of quotes from your books as he's talking.
Yeah.
Like Darth Vader wasn't a pussy. You know, no one's ever called Darth Vader a pussy. And also, too, you know, when the riots hit last year, I immediately thought, well, especially when COVID hit, but then again, when the riots hit, I'm always thinking like way of men, tribes, even just very simple racial divisions, how people group up by just physical appearances and racial backgrounds. You saw the Italians kind of getting together in their neighborhoods to defend their neighborhoods with guns and, you know, baseball bats, whatever. You saw that with the Puerto Ricans. Or, you know, you see this in the news and shit when it was going down. I'm like, wow, Jack was not only right, you're seeing it in real time, like on CNN and Fox and all these, you know, mainstream news. Just these people are grouping up in their suburban neighborhood. These people are grouping up in their Italian restaurant neighborhood. Anyway, though, let's take a step back. And how's 2021 treating Jack Donovan? Where are your thoughts at? Let's just opening statements.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can just jump off of that. It's obviously those people have you know, the Italians get together and the neighborhoods get together. It's like they have some kind of structure already. They have some kind of affinity together. And what's interesting is that part of this whole idea of what they're doing with the woke culture and just general disorientation, redefining words and so forth, is to take away all your pillars of meaning, like all the central points, the Axis Mundi, like this is what we actually believe, this is truth. And if they take away all the pillars, like taking away the foundation of a house, there's nothing there. It won't stand. And so that's what they're doing. And it doesn't matter that their argument, a lot of people get caught up in people's arguments, like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to. And that's the great thing. So many of these things, it's like, it's obvious that it doesn't make any sense. And I think that they know that they're lying. You know, with so many issues, whether it's about, you know, the virus or whether it's about the, you know, I read like the ACLU said the other day, like myth, like men and women are not a binary thing every day. Like they don't have special characteristics attached to them. That is a myth. Well, no, that's a lie, and they know that it's a lie. I'm like, that's.
Do you think that's the exact point in some cases, that they're deliberately just trying to screw everyone's head over?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, like the Orwellian thing, like up is down, down is up. It becomes like a Charles Manson speech, like I'm you, you are me. What is happening? Like it's just mind control. It's total mind control. Like if we take away every pillar of meaning that you have, well, if everything I believe might not be right, what is right? Who will tell me? The government will. You know, and that's what they're doing. I mean, so it doesn't matter. It's like the arguments don't matter. Anything that they're putting out there doesn't matter because it's not sincere and it's not honest. I mean, you can see that now, and it's really gross and really weird and naked in the way that it's coming out in the press and all that. Like that thing with Time Magazine, I'm sure you saw, just put out like they're admitting that there was a cabal of people to fortify the election,
to
fortify democracy, so that Americans didn't actually elect the person that they wanted to elect. They wanted to make sure that didn't happen by fortifying democracy. You know, like, so they're going to change everything that you believe in. And I think that, and I've seen another thing, another idea that they're like,
here's the article, by the way, that you're referring to on Time Magazine.
Oh, cool.
This is a real thing. Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty amazing. That was pretty ballsy. Like, yeah, everything is to call everybody a conspiracy theorist right now, and then they're just admitting that there's a conspiracy, like, which is pretty amazing. And I think one of the other things that I've seen is, you know, like there's a move obviously to bring in more immigrants as fast as possible and whatever, and you saw that happen in Europe as well. I mean, that has been a thing in Europe for a long time, and it's not that immigrants are bad or good, or people from other places are bad or good, but you have a whole group of people that are really deeply invested in the American identity. And that's a problem, you know, like that's a problem for people who aren't, which is apparently the people who are running the country. And obviously technology and so forth. I mean, you know, if you have a whole bunch of people who are deeply married to like, hey, free speech is something that I expect, and I've always expected for my entire life. And that's very inconvenient for this whole process. And same thing, I expect to be able to own guns all my life. That's something that I've always as a cornerstone of what America is. And they're like, well, I guess we'll just bring in a whole bunch of people who don't have those expectations, and like skew the votes off and whatever. And it's anything that it becomes a core belief that is a constant in your life is something that they want to take away. And so, then once they've taken that away, then who's to say? Everything is relative, and they can keep changing the rules and moving the goalposts and doing whatever they want, like 15 days, 6 months, 2 years, like whatever. It just becomes whatever they say at that point. And that seems to be what's going on right now. And it's always been going on, but it's just going on at a really fast pace and a really obvious way.
Yeah, it almost feels like the pace is so rapid. It's almost like I don't know how to describe it, but as a descriptor, but it's like blitzkrieg. It reminds me of what the Germans did in their war at the beginning of World War II against France and these other, Belgium, Holland, shit like that. They just absolutely, they engaged in war at a pace that had never been seen before. And this is one of the reasons they were so victorious so massively at the beginning of World War II. They just took everyone by shock. Even major nations like France just ran right up fucking over them. And that's what it feels like, and culturally and politically and in every way that's non-kinetic or non-physical. In some ways it's physical, obviously, with the lockdowns and the masks. But, as of yet, there's not open genocide and gulags just yet. However close we are to that, it's just
no. And I wonder if they'll keep like working the throttle on that, because they can't go too much too fast on certain things. Because like they only had so long to do the lockdowns in America. They can mess with the UK for as long as they want, because what are they going to do? Yeah. But like you can only, out here, like in Utah, it's like Florida, like it's not even explicit. It's like theoretically everybody's supposed to be wearing a mask all the time, but you go to the gym, you wear it when you get to the front desk, you take it off, you put it in your locker, you put it back on the way out. Like nobody cares. Everybody's done. We're not doing it. And so you see that everywhere except for in like the really tight little cities.
You're killing grandma, Jack. Why are you killing grandma, dude? Killing grandma, man. All the Utah grandmas.
He's dead anyway right now.
He had a good run. No, so I think in America, I think they have to be a little bit careful with how far they push. And also there is, as Piero mentioned, in America, you do have 20 years worth of armed veterans who are generally conservative and do believe in the founding principles. And right now, about half of them are like, this is not okay. And about half of them are like, I still believe in the flag. I still believe in America. And they're like, keep trying to talk themselves back into it. I watched a couple guys who I thought I knew flip the second the election happened. The inauguration happened, like, all right, President Biden. I'm like, really? But it's taking guys all different levels of, how many buttons are you going to push on them before they're like, this is no longer America? So, and then that's when the government runs into a problem, because those are the guys that they have to worry about. Yeah. And so as long as those guys are still bought in, at least on some level, like, hey, we can work this out.
Yep.
They're good. But if they push it too far, too fast, they're like I said, as much as they're threatening it, like, if you try to disarm America forcibly tomorrow, you're looking at like Afghanistan. That's not going to happen. That's not real. And so they're saying it, but they're just going to do a whole lot of little measures, like different, like little registrations and making things more expensive and doing all kinds of things like that. Because they can't just go to door and be like, hey, bud, give me your guns. Because a lot of police officers are going to get shot. Dudes aren't going to do it.
They're pushing in that direction, though, for sure. We've never seen this level of aggression. Like, at the end of the day, Obama never really did much with guns, and he even expanded gun rights, ironically, in very limited ways, like in national parks. But the whole gun scare with that never happened. With President-elect Biden, this seems to be a real thing that they're pushing very super aggressively in a way that we've never really seen. Not even the 90s with the assault weapon ban thing. Even that had an expiration on it, and it went away in 2004 permanently.
Right.
And that's like not what we're seeing now. We're seeing like, a third term of Obama on steroids, like a lot of steroids. So
it's like, I've kind of said to a whole bunch of people, it's like they've just spent the entire last year calling you a pussy. Basically, like that's what they're doing, is they're looking at American dudes, be like, we think you're pussies. We don't think you're going to do it.
Yep.
And they're daring them at this point.
Yeah.
But it's like they need to have a reason. And obviously, another thing that they're shutting down to, this is getting subversive. But another thing they're doing is they're shutting down all the ways of communication, so you can't really trust any kind of communication, so you can't organize in any way that's feasible.
Yeah.
So that's a really big block on that, because I'm telling guys, I think that's going to be my newsletter this week, because dudes still think their little Telegram groups are like secure and they can go in and run their mouths about whatever thing. I'm like, that's not real. Yeah. Like that's, like, which one of you, how well do you know all the guys in your Telegram group? Was one of them work for the government? Like, you don't
federal agent.
Yeah, or if they don't even have to, they just have someone who's going to post your shit online. Like so-and-so who works at blah, 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 said something insurrectionist or something bad or whatever, something politically incorrect. That's, so people really, there's really no way for them to communicate in a secure way. And so that's a win that the government has right now, because they have technology under their thumb.
Yeah, it's getting increasingly difficult, even if you are invested in it and interested to communicate securely.
Or rather the opposite. Technology has the government under its thumb.
I was going to say, actually, I felt a little weird when I said that, because it's starting to look the other way. Yeah. I mean, I think we didn't. You probably saw it too, Anthony, because I know you keep your eye on things. There was something about Nevada trying to introduce a law that saying technology companies can create mini states.
Yeah, they can create local governments. Yeah, it's super, it's cyberpunk. Like it's extremely creepy to say the least.
Yeah.
At a scale that we've never really seen before. I mean, I guess in the old days you had kind of mining towns that kind of owned. There was but that was a long time ago, and we're seeing now a resurgence though of that.
Well, I mean, that is what they do. They go to a place and they create a whole campus. And and then they have to have housing for all the tech people they want to import, and so they have to build that anyway. So they're basically doing community building to start with, so that they can make their company work. But to have them then create their own governments housed by the company is really weird and corrupt company store kind of stuff. Yeah,
they're going to give you their own Bitcoin now. They're going to make their own cryptocurrency that they're going to control you with, right? I mean, Facebook companies are talking about this for a while. So they're going to own where you live. They're going to own literally the local government. They're going to own the currency. They're going to own the communication. Eventually, you're going to be, it's like Wall-E shit. You're going to be 400 pounds plugged into a scooter, and you're just clicking, what is it, the CAPTCHA things all day or something.
Yeah, I mean,
truck or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, most people are already there. Stay in your home, don't leave your home. That's okay. I like video games. I like video games. Can my Cheetos be delivered? Okay, cool.
Yeah, Amazon Prime the Cheetos.
Amazon Prime. You got the Cheetos. You got your top ramen. You got all the nutrition you need to become a disgusting person. Yeah, you can just keep doing that.
Yeah, there's actually a movie that came out too just recently, Songbird. I found it. It was like a major production. I'm surprised I missed it. And it's all about kind of like Piero was talking about, both, the lockdowns. They basically, the whole movie is based on COVID never ending. It just keeps mutating, getting more lethal, more aggressive, more, spreading and stuff. And so they're on week 200 and something of lockdown. And it's all based in LA and California. It seems pretty well done. Martial laws.
Sounds very realistic.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately,
yeah,
it sounds realistic, except that there's no like major pushback, which doesn't seem realistic. But
right,
we'll see. I mean, based on what we've seen so far.
And of course, for those who read my book on pandemics, there's a big part in CBRN which is about that. We discussed that last time. Mutations usually never go. Actually, never. Not just usually. They never go for more deadly because it makes no sense. Mutations go to less deadly, perhaps more contagious, but much less deadly. In fact, what we're seeing today is that all of this 1 year long crisis is basically a crisis that has been either manufactured or bumbled to bigger proportion by incompetence. I can't say which because I don't have proof, but certainly this death rate that we now can calculate after 1 year. Remember, we had a chat exactly almost a year ago in March, where we were not sure what would be the death rate, and hence this is why we were kind of accepting that we would need to be isolated and cautious, because the data from China was like 20% death rate, and that was like shocking. Yeah. Now, after a year, we have data for 1 year. So 1 year is 0.05 on average in Western countries, where people mingle together a lot in public transports and in cramped areas at work and so on, which is not the case in, let's say, in Africa or in tropical countries, for example. So we are the worst case scenarios, and the death rate has been officially 0.05 roughly on average, which you have to reduce because obviously they counted as death from this Chinese monkey thing. We cannot even say the word, otherwise we get shut down. But
yeah.
You know, the mother of a friend died from a heart attack 2 weeks ago, and they were upset because they put COVID on the death certificates, and they asked why, and they say, oh, the rule is that if you have been positive in the last month, whatever you die for gets treated as COVID. Mm-hmm. And so we have increased the number of deaths artificially by probably a factor of 5, 10, and yet it's still super low. So this is nothing, and we should be happy that it wasn't the Black Death, fortunately, and it makes sense that it wasn't. So we have to keep in mind that even a year ago we were discussing about not being stressed and not be fearful about this. We had to be cautious and try to understand. But now the ball is into a different game, and this game is how many of our freedoms and how many of our rights are we going to lose? And my answer is it doesn't matter, because the thing is going to collapse anyway. And again, you are not living, and I'm sure, unfortunately, we can regret that, yes. But unfortunately, we don't live as Americans, as Europeans, as French, as Swiss. We are our own people with our families and our friends. The reality of our lives is much smaller in reality than it was when you were feeling part, like after Pearl Harbor, let's say, you were part of a big country at war with against an aggression. Now you just feel your lover, your family, your group of friends, and that's what matters. And because everything else you have no control on. So we have to learn to be. We are really, and this is very serious. We have to learn to be stoics and to really understand that we should care only of the things that matter to us directly, and not spend too much time, because the machine that is trying to get a hold on all these superficial things is doomed anyway, and it's going to crash, bringing it down with it so many other people who will be emotionally attached to either the new system, which is going to die, or the old system, which is already dead. So we have to take care of ourselves, of our caring group of people, not more. At least I know it can sound defeatist for many, but I think it's very optimistic, in fact.
Well, to bounce off of that, to gold pill that a little bit. One of the things that I've been talking about, because that all may happen, and I think what's important though is, because that's been the tendency, at least for American men. I can't speak for men worldwide, but that has been the tendency for American men, is to just actually they let their women take over in many cases. And I saw that when I was, I worked on the recall campaign in Oregon. I was just, I got to do something. And I saw everybody who was really running and this is Republicans, everybody who's really running things were women. And they were doing all the legwork, and the dudes were just sitting at home grumbling about stuff, being mad. And that's where I think American men failed, and maybe men around the world. I can't really speak to that, but that they needed to step up and manage their communities, and they let the worst people do it. Instead, they let take the worst people you can possibly imagine and let them run things for you, and then see how that's going to work out. and we've seen how it's going to work out. And I think that it's time, whether or not this government falls or this collapses or that, I think it would be really, what I hope to see is a lot more of these men who are waking up and realizing that, man, they've been asleep at the wheel for a long time, to step up and take leadership roles in their communities. Not like, well, okay, everybody's not going to go out and run for senator and be, like whatever, but in their communities, I think is where that matters anyway. Your local governments and so forth. It's like, we could use a lot more men who have the right kind of views and have the best attitudes involved in the government in some way. So when it starts to fall apart, they have access to all those things or whatever. It's like, and we don't have to go full Mad Max. There's a lot of different things, and who knows, parts of the system that could be saved. They could be involved in managing those, and there's so many guys who have the capabilities to do that. And I see guys, I'm a weirdo. I don't have the right pieces of that puzzle to get elected to anything, but there are guys who do. And a lot of there are guys who are watching this who do right now. And they are guys who have families. They have pretty reasonable, sustainable, like solid lifestyles. They've been successful. And maybe that's time for them to like get involved and, just run for town council or get into the system of power. And then all the cops, and then you have some kind of attachment to all this kind of thing, rather than just sitting at your home on your couch, watching the news, grumbling and polishing your guns, because that's a lot of dudes. And those dudes need to step up and take leadership roles, I think, right now.
All right. To take a quick, I missed a lot of that. My internet cut out for some reason, but I'm glad the show carried on. I'm back. They sound like it ended with local government, but I want to take a step back because both of you have been kind of hitting on this, especially Piero mentioned, he talked about fear and stress and, psychologically winning. So I wanted to introduce to the show Mr. Richard Grannon. I figured he'd be a good expert on fear and stress and psychology.
Hello, chaps. Good to see you all. I heard what Piero said as it relates to the fear and stress element, but also what Jack was saying with the abrogation of responsibility, where there are effectively fewer men in the room and fewer adults in the room. Not that they're not physically present, but they're not mentally and emotionally present. And there does seem to be a correlation there with the psychological attitude that somebody else is going to do this. And this is, I believe this is modern, because as I'm looking more and more at American history and French history and the revolutions, I sort of think, I'm looking at the history and what people did, and I'm thinking, who the bloody hell did these people think they were? Well, they thought that they were living life. They didn't see their lives as being, history is done, and now I'm in some other phase. They were part of reality unfolding. And we've been entrained through these little machines that we're all using now, and frankly, too much fucking television, to think that we're watching a film, and that these things are out there and the actors are others. And we've forgotten that we're the actors. There's nobody coming. Nobody's coming. There's no hyper intelligent alien race zooming across the universe now that's going to go, oh, we see you're struggling here, guys. We're going to, no, it's just us.
I thought the government was coming to save us. That's what they tell me all the time. They're coming to help. Biden told me they're coming to help, dude.
There's special qualities that can help us.
CNN is coming to help us all. They're going to tell us the real news. They're going to tell us the real information, and you just have to obey. Obey,
and all will be well. Get onto the cattle car. There's good things at the other end of this ride. So I think the systemic issues that Piero talks about a lot, and what Jack was just referring to there, they tie in together. Many humans across the chain of communication and across the chains of interaction have to sort of go hands off in order for us to end up in this mess. We're so wealthy. We're so well educated. We're so informed. And look at what we're doing with it. We're pathetic. It's an absolutely pathetic display that we're seeing right now of just rank, frankly, corruption, narcissism, selfishness. But the big pandemic that we face isn't narcissism. You would think I would bang that drum. It's actually codependency. We are the abusees. So we're just waiting for the next shitty thing to unfold. It's lamentable. It's there's really no excuse for this now.
I saw some of our other speakers, actually. You mentioned abuse. Jack Murphy, the author of Democrat to Deplorable, tweeting yesterday in a big county as that, especially with the Time magazine article and them just basically rubbing the abuse in our face, it feels like we're in an abusive relationship. And this is the exact language of an abuser. If it was a BPD chick, or if you were a chick with an abusive husband, this is the exact language and methodology and gaslighting and this covert gaslighting, and that all the pressure flips and everything. That's all. Yeah.
I love you. I love you. It's okay.
No, that's why I hate you. I love you, baby. It's for your own good. It's for your own good.
500 years ago, precisely 500 years ago, there was a French humanist called Boundaryless. He wrote a small book, which I'm sure is translated in English and everyone should read. It's very small, very easy to read. It's called Discourse on, if I translate it literally, Discourse on the Voluntary Submission, which is not S&M. It's about why populations agree to be submitted to absolute power, which at the time was obviously the kings. And it is true that there is a codependency relationship because, first of all, you feel moral to be submitted because you are the little guy. So there is a plus in your value system, especially today. There is what Nietzsche would call, the slave mentality element, where you want to say, well, after all, I feel ennobled to be the poor person, the poor submissive man. But there is also the fact that being submitted is easy because you forfeit your responsibility to do anything. And therefore, you let the leaders, the state, usually the governments, the kings, whatever, to work out your life for you. And it's super easy. It's much easier to live as a slave than to be a responsible free man. This is very common in the world. The Romans knew that and wrote extensively about it. The Greeks knew that, and even other society where individual freedom is frowned upon, like in Asia or in the Middle East. Well, they realize and they write about the fact that being free and independent is a tough job, it's difficult. And then there is also the fact that, you have this bliss of today technology allows you to be in your house, to have porn, to have a food delivered to you. You have a little check every month. But, eventually the difference is that the modern slave in the world where you have AI and robotics is actually not needed. So the question is, how long will it be tolerated for this codependency to exist? Because the power trip of the powerful people who run the world, and it's not a conspiracy, it's just obvious, eventually will run down. And there is always the risk that they twist to the more bloodthirsty trip, which happened in history a lot. When you look at how Stalinist Russia, Soviet Union, in fact, emerged, how Nazi Germany emerged, there is a point where suddenly you go from, I like people to be under my thumb, to how about I kill as many as I can? And there is this tendency which is worrisome, obviously.
And we're seeing that in America right now. We're seeing, conservatives, Trump supporters, whatever. Everybody's being labeled now domestic terrorist. There was a news anchor on MSNBC just yesterday or the day before, a major news anchor I've seen 1,000 times. And she was actually discussing using drone strikes to kill Americans on American soil for alleged domestic terrorism.
Well,
blowing people up.
Very shortly, what you have to watch for is the moment they dehumanize you by comparing you like an animal. The day they say that you're an infidel, a pig, a rat.
They are. They started doing that.
Really worried.
The New York Times did that. They compared Republicans to rats. It was very similar to German propaganda, and they did this like a month ago.
And worried.
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely prepping and worried, man. I've been prepping harder. I've been into prepping and survivalism, especially thanks to Dmitry Orlov, one of your friends, a great author, since about 2010, 2011. And I'm really glad I got into it then, because it's now, especially since last year, it's really everything I learned, every preparation I did put me in a good position. And then I was able to double down on all that and triple down on that as things keep getting us worse and worse and worse into our new woke order of hell. Yeah.
New woke order. That's good. I like that.
That's the title of the episode, actually, is Surviving the New Woke Order.
Fortunately, these woke progressive people, they're not red guards. They're not Waffen-SS, physically and mentally. As I said in the very beginning, just saying no might do a lot.
Yeah, I'm all about it, man. I really been, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I've really been thinking about that because the manosphere is my first major introduction to no as a concept and a tool. I never really heard that before. And then obviously studying psychology, especially personality disorders and Richard Grandin's work, it all clicked together. Like no, 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 no. It's almost like the more you can say no in your personal life, the better it's going to get. And the more that a culture can say no, the better it's going to get too.
Yeah, I honestly, this has been a big thing for me this past year because I'm very libertarian in nature generally. I'm like, live and let live. I don't care what you do. You know, like, dude, knock yourself out. Dye your hair purple. Do whatever you want. I don't care. You know, as long as you don't make me like affirm it for you, we're good. And you know, which that's become unacceptable because you have to affirm it as well. But you know, so I've always been that way, and that's what, you know, I was able to like go out in Portland and whatever, and I don't care. You know, like I'll hang out with whatever. That was my thing. I'm like, I'll hang out with whatever group of people. I don't care what they believe, whatever. And this is the year that I was like, no, they'd like, no, like if it in America, I mean, obviously Europe is the political system is very different, but America was very specifically like, I lived in a Democrat state. We were locked down for a really long time. It was a really bad thing. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a Democrat, you are actually voting to enslave me. Now, like, and I'm not cool with that. Like I'm not cool with that. Like, you are actually working to enslave me and enabling that system, and you're complicit in it. And like I've made a joke. It's been my, you know, I'm not dicking down Democrats anymore. Like that's like I'm not even gonna have that stupid discussion with somebody about they believe this stupid thing. I'm like, no, I'd rather just not. You know, and you know, people in my friend circle, whatever. My sister's a Democrat. That's the only thing. She's blood, so that's fine. But like, that's beyond that. There's no one in my circle that I'm gonna support or hang out with or whatever. I don't have time to. Democrats don't get my house. You know,
well,
like
what's interesting too is, as you're mentioning this, Jack, is that there is legitimate conflict in the Democratic Party, just like there's in the Republican Party. In the Republican Party in America, you see the MAGA people, the patriots, versus these rhinos, these neoconservatives. You see that same phenomenon in the Democrats, but it's like completely in the opposite direction. Their internal conflict is between neoliberals like Biden and these super woke, super aggressive communists. So it's like they have their own legitimate conflict, the Bernie Sanders, but it's like veering towards Mao. Whereas on the right, you see it veering towards Trump and 1776, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, founding fathers. So it's like, it's kind of cool to see that they have their own conflict, but then it's like super negative. Whereas on the right, you have a much healthier conflict going on. But you know, it's not perfect right now, but this kind of came to mind as you're mentioning that. Because Democrats are not all the same. Some of them are extremely fucked up.
Yeah. I like where you went with that. Some of them are really fucked up. But yeah, I mean, it's just I do think that's the thing is I guess conservatives or whatever. I don't even like that word really. But in America, they've had nice guy syndrome, where they're like, you know, like, oh well, they moved in, they have nice restaurants, you know, like whatever, you know, like they changed their town a little bit, that's cool, and they just keep kind of, you know, like being like, that's okay, we'll just be nice, and they don't want to say anything that's going to be aggressive because they're well-adjusted, decent people. A lot of them, like you go to small towns and whatever, they just want to be friendly. They don't want to have the fight with you or whatever.
But now it's veered off to like, oh, my wife's beating me. That's okay. Like, oh,
like,
whatever.
Like now it's like, it's time to say no. Like it's time to say like, no, I went through restaurants and I'm like, if you did like made certain political posts that everyone was making at a certain time, and I was like, I'm not going to that restaurant. I'm not going to that restaurant. You know, I've started doing that. Like I'm not. I mean, obviously, there's things I have to support because I have no choice. I mean, I use Apple products, you know, like there's things that I can't get away from, but you know, other things, if I can make a choice to not support a business or a person or whatever who's affiliated in that way, I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to apologize about it. and yeah, I'll be like, yeah, sorry,
Fuck
we're
yeah.
not cool. Yeah.
I've loved it, Jack. I've watched your newsletter and your blog for a while now. I do that for almost every speaker that I can, and then just luck of the draw. I sometimes see more of one guy than another, but I really love the way you're thinking and your assertiveness and your even philosophic aggression to write and be pronounced and assertive. It's awesome. More men need to do that, and more authors. And you're leading the way in that sense in many ways, with writing especially. Guys like Richard Gannon obviously do that with video, and Piero is kind of a mix. Richard, let's go back to you. You were discussing narcissism and how that's not the thing you're beating up on. Now you're focusing on codependency.
Yeah.
Don't some psychologists view narcissism as a form of codependency, or what's the connection between those two?
Technically speaking, narcissism is codependency. So it's kind of we have this misnomer where we say the victim is a codependent and the narcissist is therefore not. But narcissism is codependency. Narcissists and codependents function so well together because their pathologies mirror one another, so they work hand in glove. It's why it's very difficult to leave a narcissistically abusive relationship. And even if you weren't a codependent before you started the relationship, you will be by the end of it. And to that extent, we have the same functions. Codependents have the same functions as narcissists. We operate from a false self, the way narcissists do. We live a false narrative. And it is explained perfectly by Nietzsche's concept that you mentioned earlier of the slave morality, which is we view our supplication and our submission as in sort of righteous spiritual terms, like this is the right thing to do. To bring it back to politics, but not really, because what I would claim is what we're seeing now, these are not political issues. You can't say anymore it's left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. This is more like a cult. Wokeism is a cult. It's a mind virus. I speak as somebody who's on the left. I'm left of center. I'm libertarian leaning leftist, and I just say no. This is insanity. And it's a kind of codependent narcissism that's playing out. And how does that function? It's boundaryless because they have no ego. They have no discrete ego that keeps anything out, and they have no discrete ego that keeps anything in, which is why they'll never say no to others and they never say no to themselves. Now, as Jack said before, that's cool if you're in your camp over there, living crazy, being boundaryless, saying no to nobody, never. But when you come to my camp, and then I have to fucking throw open my doors to everybody in every concept, or else I'm guilty of a hate crime, that's when, you would start prepping, because the only answer to that, and I don't want to say anything insightful, but being a realist, only violence can come next. You're in my domain telling me how I have to operate. I have to say certain words. I have to dress a certain way. They're even trying, I've even been told who I have to find sexually attractive now. I've had people tell me, like, they're trying to tell me the ethnicities I have to find attractive. They're telling me I have to find transgender people attractive. I'm like, whoa. I'm not saying that to you, homie. Why you leave me alone? Why do you care? That's private.
This is really interesting, Richard. I've never thought about it that way, and I'm assuming you've said this before in your videos, but I missed it because there's like thousands, which I love. Flood the internet.
I like the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, fuck yeah. But basically what you're saying is that since they're kind of egoless, or they're boundaryless internally, that it's spreading externally.
Yes. So
further and further into culture, and even to your own physical, even to another person's mind and their personal boundaries. People don't even know. They're strangers, right?
This particular interpretation of Marxism, communism, I'll do the air quotes thing, because these people have never read Marx. They don't understand Marx, and they don't really understand, but let's leave that. But if you take the flavor of Marxism, the t-shirt, you wear the Che Guevara t-shirt, and you take the style, you think that's what he said, and you think that's what communism is. It's flatten everything. It's all hierarchy is bad. All structure is bad. So flatten everything and everything will be okay, which is a hysterical, pathological worldview. That's why it ends in such terrible violence every time, because nobody passes the purity test. You create an orthodoxy that looks like that. Everybody fails the purity test. That's what happened with the Khmer Rouge. You could argue that's what happened in Stalin's camp. You could argue that everywhere this is played out, practically.
Yeah, I was going to say,
its own tail.
Piero was mentioning this earlier, the Soviet Union, and not only the fall, but I was thinking about the rise. And in my understanding of history, maybe someone can speak on it if they're more educated on it. The hardcore communists from early on, the Leninists and whatever, they were eventually executed. They had the true believers in Leninism and communism and Marxism. They were one of the first ones to go. The true believers dead. Can you guys, is that accurate? And do you see a parallels?
So. Piero, is that right?
Sure, for sure. What happens when you have ideology being used to seize power is that people who are only in it for the power eventually get rid of the people who are in for the ideology, because they are a threat to their own total control. This is why you always have very powerful people. In fact, the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, of what they call October Revolution, which is in November, in fact, because of the Canada thing. They to seize power, they had to use criminality. They had to use thugs, of which Stalin was the most powerful, able to organize. They used, because obviously the professional military was for the Tsar, for the emperor, and therefore didn't want to participate into that. So they used the masses, encadrés, to be organized by thugs, by pure violent people out of the jail, out of prisons. Not unlike some movement with 3 letters, which I'm not even mentioning, that has happened over the last year in the US.
Sounds like California.
And so basically they use the thugs, the pure powerful, and you can imagine that these people have no ideology. They just want very short-term advantages. And eventually the people who consolidate, so then it splits into 2 possibilities historically. Either you go with the ideologues, the SA for Nazi Germany, the Khmer Rouge, the Red Guards in Maoist China, or the people who want to keep power, they eliminate the ideologues. Nazi Germany, Hitler eliminated the heads of the SA. Mao, well, actually the followers of Mao, the successors of Mao, Deng Xiaoping, he controlled and disbanded the Red Guards. The Stalin eventually destroyed the Bolshevik Trotskyists that pushed for worldwide revolution, because he thought it was much better to keep one country under his boot and under his control and do what he wanted with it. So pragmatic power always trumps ideology, and usually does this in the process with millions and millions of bodies. And this is what, if possible, we would like to avoid. But again, is it under our power? I think the thing which is under our power is to control ourselves. And if there's many of us to do it, yes, then we do change things. But it has to start with you. I don't believe so much into evangelizing about, I mean, you do that, Mr. President, you do that. You go into say men should become men. But this is by example. This is by teaching. It's not forcing people.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask Jack a question here on this, because I think I know what you're referring to, Pierre. I remember I really appreciate it too. You watched, I think, my entire speech in Poland, the manosphere, which was kind of outlining what the manosphere is, where it's been, where it's going. And I mentioned that I think only masculinity can save the world. Certainly masculinity is primarily, I think, what built America, and it's what built the West. So Jack, can masculinity save America? Can it rebuild America? Can it rebuild the West? What are your thoughts on masculinity as a driving fundamental force?
Well, I mean, obviously it could, because it's built and destroyed everything thus far. I mean, that's really the only thing we have. Like one group of men sweep in, one other group of men sweep out. It's just about different changing power structures. And but yeah, I mean, I think you posted, maybe, and a couple other people, like the Chinese are trying to make their men more masculine now.
Oh yeah.
And which is probably just a PR thing, whatever. Like who cares? Who knows if that's real? But because it came from China. But I mean, obviously, if there's going to be hard times, then you're going to need to rely on men, because all those, as Piero would agree, I'm sure, all this progressive wokeism and the feminism and everything, they go away, and everything's like blowjobs for beans. And like it's like that's not real anymore.
Yeah.
And so like I mean, you need men who realize that they need to become that guy and take steps to do that. And obviously that's why there's such a hard push on making men more passive. And we've seen this for decades, like make men cry more, make men more passive, make them like don't
that was
work
like
out.
that was a couple days ago from the UN. What men need to do. They need to cry more. They need to I
mean, that's why the messaging, it's like, no, we want you to be as weak as possible, because if you're not, that's going to be problematic. And so masculinity really is the only thing that can stand against this.
Well, I want to move on to Richard in a second, but before I do, Jack, what is the relation between masculinity and totalitarian regimes? So like communism, Nazism, Marxism, all this crap, what is the basic connection that men should understand about that?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, if you listen to like the whatever the feminists or woke kind of train, I mean, obviously, the difference between fascism and communism, at least in theory, is that fascism tends to have a heroic narrative associated with it, and then communism has a resentment narrative. Like we're going to take everything that the rich have and give it to you because you poor weak people who've been oppressed. And then, like the fascist narrative, like, we are going to be heroes and conquerors together, my brothers. And, I mean, but they're still, at the end of the day, in order to do that, it's like, you will all submit to exactly what we're going to say for this goal. And just the goals are different. The stated goals are different. But fascism tends to appeal to men's sense of wanting to be heroes and wanting to be powerful and wanting to be part of a big movement. But it's fascism as it existed then that can't exist in the current system. Like there's all this fear that it's going to come back, and that's not real. Like those guys aren't a threat. And man, I think the American ideal, basically, the more like the frontiers individualism ideal is that that every man gets to be sovereign himself. And that is also appealing to men. Like, no, don't come in my house or I'm going to shoot you. No, don't come in, no, I get to protect my family. I get to protect my community. I get to do these things. And that's very much ingrained in the American personality. And that, and has been what men have fought for. I mean, what do men fight for? They fight for self-determination. And like to say like, hey, you guys aren't ruling us the way we want to run ourselves. I mean, and that's what a lot of wars are really about, at least ideologically. Like we want to control our own destiny. And so I think that's one of the things that men have to watch out for. Like, what are they telling you? Are they selling you slavery so that you can be more, like effeminate, really, more passive? Or are they selling you a fantasy of dominance? Because there are a lot of guys in the near future who are going to show up to sell you a fantasy of dominance. And you have to make sure, you have to realize that sometimes that guy is not the king under the mountain. And he's not the guy. But a lot of guys, they're desperate right now. I mean, I cut off a friend yesterday who I've had a really good friend for a while. And I told it, like he went the white direction. And I've talked him out of it a bunch of times. I'm like, you're just going to be trailer trash. This is not the way to go, bud. This is not it. Like there's no there. Mm-hmm. And then someone sent me a screenshot from a Telegram group, which is another reason why they're not secure. And I was like, we've had this discussion. I can't be friends with you if you're going to go that way. Yeah. I had to cut ties from him completely. I'm like, he's like erased from my life as of yesterday. Damn. But that's what you have to do, because otherwise if that guy goes and does something stupid or gets on TV or whatever, he's friends with Jack Donovan. Mm-hmm. Like I can't have that. Yeah. And so like, and it sucks to do that, but guys like that, I mean, they're scared. They see like a lot of like things happening in the world right now. They're like, they feel like the world's closing in on them. And yeah, they're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for a way out. They're looking for light at the end of the tunnel, and who's going to how are we going to get there? And so, but if that's not the light and that's not the way, and so there are a lot of people, a lot of guys are going to get sucked into that. I mean, this all the anti-racist stuff last year created more racism than existed previously. And I mean, that's hard to deny. I mean, I watched some of their newsletters, and because I'm still on some mailing lists, and I'm like, oh, they raised $150,000 this year. They're having a great year.
Wow.
You know, like, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of these, you know, like these organizations that were dying that are now like, you know, because you're seeing videos of, you know, racial violence in the streets, and if you don't have a way to filter that, if you're filtering it through Telegram groups of dudes posting memes and shit, you know, like, then you get in a situation where you that starts to become your only reality. And yeah, but I just don't think that's a viable reality, and so it's unfortunate. But that, yeah, there's going to be an attraction to that's rising.
It seems like a natural.
What the media wants, and I'm like, that's what pisses me off. I'm like, you know, the media is setting this up right now. You can see it. Like, everyone who disagrees with us is a white supremacist, even if they're black. You know, like anyone at all who disagrees with us.
Well, it's really multiracial whiteness. So, you know,
yeah, I know.
If you're black, you're white. Yeah, if you're Chinese, you're white. Now the Asians are considered white. I mean, that's crazy.
And that's Charles Manson shit, right? That's like, you're black, you're white. If you do disagree with us, you're really white, even though you're black. You know, like that's what they're doing.
A quick one. Yeah, just quickly. What's one of the strategies of power is to, you know, divide and conquer, is putting conflict in a horizontal way. Let's have poor people fight each other so that you can keep controlling the means of production, if I use a Marxist term. But certainly this is a common strategy as well of whoever holds power, to make sure that it can hold it a little bit longer, especially when everyone knows that the long-term prospects are not very good. And usually this happens when the elites that run the show eventually plan an escape, trying to take the loot with them to some other countries they will loot in the future. Or at least they hope so. It's going to be hard in China, I think. But certainly in the West, the looting is going on. The corruption is just obvious. And so instead of wanting vertical conflict, which is what revolutionary conflicts are about, you want to make sure you do horizontalize. Therefore, you have to put men against women, different races against each other, different groups and whatever. And the more this conflict goes on, and even better if it's online rather than in the streets, this is good for the power. Now, it's still not going to change the bottom line and the end results, in my opinion, but it is clearly, as Jack just said, completely organized and manipulated. And yeah, it's part of the game we don't want to be playing and we don't want to be in.
Yeah. I want to take a quick commercial break based on a comment someone left just a minute ago. First of all, is that set up? Well, here we go. Let's do this. This show is sponsored by 21 University, the Richard Grannon CPTSD Masterclass, Healing from Complex Trauma as a Man. It's an amazing course available at 21 University, filmed by 21 Studios, but owned by Richard Grannon. We offer it here at the university. It's our first premium course. It's not included with the regular membership, but it is super badass. It's got 9 modules, all of which feature Richard Grannon. And then some of them at the end, he includes certain guests like Jack Donovan, Sean Smith, George Bruno, and Alexander A.J. Cortez. It's an amazing class. It's on sale right now for $199, down from $299. You should check it out at 21university.com. You can just go there and support both the Redman Group, 21 Studios, and Richard Grannon by clicking new course with a little light bulb on it. It's super awesome. And also, someone asked if Richard Grannon had a YouTube channel. He definitely has a YouTube channel that is fucking massive, like 21 Studios. It's got probably 1,000 videos or more. So you can find that at Richard Grannon. Just search it on YouTube, pull right up. That's his main channel. He has another channel as well. It's Richard Grannon Philosophy, I think. And he's also on Instagram and Facebook. So make sure you check him out. And commercial break. And we'll continue to Richard Grannon. So Richard, you're famous.
You didn't give out my OnlyFans. Yeah, really, that's where the money's
Dude,
at.
I was gonna make that joke and then I stopped myself. I was gonna jump in.
Sorry.
Back from our commercial breakdown. Hey, I mean, butthole pictures for $7 a month is a profitable business. Ask American women.
It's capitalism, comrades. What do you want?
Yeah, exactly. Blowjobs for beans. Go ahead.
There's a point that Jack made and a point that Piero made. I didn't drink enough coffee today. I'm just going to try and address them both real quick, before they slip away like fish. The thing of saying there's no there. Thank you for saying that. I am going to borrow that. I will credit you. We are in the midst of. I really do see this as like a psychological virus, a mental virus. Gad Sad, I believe, is writing or has written a book about this, how memes actually are infecting people's minds, and this utopianism. And it's utopianism.
Is called, just to interject, the book is called The Parasitic Mind, I think is what you're referring to. Perfect
name for it. It's coming from all sides of the political spectrum because we are panicking. We're watching something disintegrate and it's creating a panic. And just to tag that onto what Piero said, I just sat here reflecting and thinking, God, isn't it strange for a sort of a proto-Marxist revolution, how little vertical discourse there is. We're not going after the elites here. It's all working class versus working class, civilian versus cop, black versus white, man versus woman. And I just had that thought, who's running this? Mainly bourgeoisie level educated white people are the motor behind wokeism in the majority, if we're talking numbers. And I'm thinking, you're not the heroes of you'd be the strangest heroes of a Marxist revolution ever if it turned out to be you guys. And these are the ones complaining about their oppression. You're educated and you live in the richest country in the world. Where is your oppression? And I'd never actually thought about it until you mentioned the horizontal revolution versus the vertical revolution. There really is a huge glaring effort here to keep it horizontal. It is so evil. It's so deceptive. And it's such I'm not going to defend Marxism, but it's a complete misuse of the ideology itself, which is why I would say this really isn't politics. This is kind of a mass hysteria that has more to do with the psychology of the witch hunts, which I've been spending more time reviewing recently. And those witch hunts, they absolutely correlated with shitty times, bad crops, disease, pandemics, things not going well. Somebody must be to blame. It's the darkest elements of the Jungian shadow that have not been processed, that are coming out as a collective, that are possessing people. And it doesn't matter whether you view that spiritually or psychologically. Possession is possession. They cease to. People are not talking anymore, and they're not talking about other humans as humans. We're already there. We're already there at the point of, as Piero said, the danger moment is when we dehumanize one another. I think we just passed that. I think I was watching the American media, and I was like, okay, about 2 months ago, we passed that Rubicon.
Yep.
I'm not optimistic now that there won't be very serious violence in America because the dehumanization process has already become. And this already is a witch hunt. I'll stop here. A friend of mine sent me an Instagram video where a young social media influencer was being badgered by people, and the video was posted online where they were saying, admit that you're a Republican, say that you're a Republican, just confess that you're a Republican. And I'm like, it's all kids. It's all like student age kids. And I'm like, do you guys not know about the witch trials? Do you not know that you sound like the Spanish Inquisition right now?
Dude, they don't know anything.
Put a thumbscrew on her and just twist it, and eventually she'll admit she's a fucking Republican, and then you can burn her afterwards, because that turned out really well in Europe. This, I think, is where we're going. Sorry, mate. I don't even know if you had a chance to ask me a question.
No, I don't care. Piero?
No, just to comment on what you said is that, first of all, when people had more culture, let's say a century ago, when schools were better, it was much harder to manipulate people. It was still possible. Germany was the most educated country in the world, and they got into the mess we learned so well at school. But the more we diseducate people, the less we have historical perspective and knowledge, the more we get scammed. Second point is that usually when you have that kind of conflict that is starting, and sometimes goes into a real conflict with war, with civil war, with ethnic cleansing and things like that, which is also pretty common in history. The ancient Hebrews, and as it's actually told in Leviticus in the Bible, they had this concept of the sacrificial. Not the sacrificial? It's goat. They used to have this
scapegoat.
The scapegoat, that's the word in English. And French philosopher and scientist René Girard has fantastic books, which I'm sure are in English as well, that theorize how societies basically put all the blame, all the problems that they have, indeed in difficult times, on some group. It can be a witch, it can be a religious minority, it can be something. And that group gets hell from the whole society. And this is a way for society to cleanse itself from all the bad things they did one another, and to do it through expulsion. Remember how the Indians, the Asians were expelled from Uganda in 1972, for example. How obviously the French were expelled from Algeria in 1962. How Jews were expelled from every country they were in, because they are the usual suspects for whatever that time that happens. They get the blame, and it doesn't matter if it's true, if it's not true. It does happen. And what is strange today is that the system seems to be, the government, however you call it, seems to put the blame on the majority of people.
Yep.
And this, for me, is a fundamental mistake from their side, in the sense that you cannot have a minority or an alliance of small minorities ruling over or cleansing the majority.
Agreed. It's really foolish. Yeah.
The majority is mostly male and with testosterone and weapons. And this is a recipe of disaster, of incredible proportions for the minorities who are playing in this game.
Agreed.
And I tell, as whoever wants to listen, be careful with playing the race card, because you are 10% of the people. Be careful playing the sex card when you have 100% of the testosterone. Be careful playing the LGBT alphabet card when you're not exactly super fit and healthy and more able. Be very careful what you wish for, because you may get it and it's not going to play the way you think it's going to play. This is not a video game. And it may be part. It's the first time I lived through the death of a civilization myself, so I don't know. It could well be that this is the first in history.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make, Pierre, on the majority and how they're being persecuted in America and stuff. Men, and especially masculine men, and white people in general now, are considered the devil in America, which is extremely bizarre for 10,000 different reasons. It's just stupid. What does also come to mind, though, is that I've been, like you guys, looking at history even more as of late. In particular, communist revolutions always have basically, they come right after or during a civil war. So Russia, China, Vietnam, civil war, communism. In America, we have something like that occurring, I think. I think it's maybe more of a hybrid. That's like a debatable point between the rise of Nazi Germany and the rise of communism. And none of these people are even educated in this shit, right? It's all just like, I wanted to mention too, Richard was mentioning education earlier. I discovered a couple days ago, or maybe a week or two ago now, not too long ago, in America, a lot of children are no longer taught how to write cursive. So that was, this is clown world, so it's not that surprising, I guess, but it's still like, oh, wait, what? Mm-hmm. So I grew up in the 90s learning how to write, print and cursive English language, letters and words and sentences. Mm-hmm. Children are now so dumbed down, they don't even know how to write their own language in one of the styles. And that was just shocking to me. I even heard some boomer, this guy I used to know growing up. I happened to be visiting in my hometown, and he was kind of rationalizing it. Oh, they had to make room for digital stuff, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. These children are going to school for 12 years or whatever, and they literally don't know how to write nor read. They don't know how to read or write cursive English. Like, holy fuck.
It's so bad. It's really strange how we're so informed in this period and so ignorant. Yep. One of the elements of that education, and I think that this would have been prioritized in times gone by, was travel and foreign language and foreign culture. That was what it was to be an educated young man, an educated young lady. You would speak a few languages, and you should have probably gone there as well. I'm talking to people online occasionally. I don't like arguing with people online. And I can tell they've never been to the countries they're talking about. I live in an ex-communist country. My last 3 girlfriends were all from ex-communist countries.
What
I've
country is
stayed
this?
in those. It's a lived reality for me. I can see by the looks on people's faces what it did. For
Where are
these
you
people,
living, by the way? What country?
I'm in Czech Republic now, and I was in Romania, and before that was in Bosnia.
Okay. Damn.
So, well, Bosnia wasn't communist, but it was.
Yugoslavia
Well,
was.
no, it was a little.
It was
Piero,
communist.
it was communist for a while, right?
Well, Yugoslavia was kind of Yugoslavian style communism.
Right. So they did their own. They were cool communists.
Yeah.
And so, but I've also been to Albania, multiple places like that, and it's not a theory for me. It's not an idea. I didn't live through it, but I can see these countries where you see beautiful culture, music, history, food, language, and then it's cut. It's traumatically cut, and people freeze. The whole nation freezes, and they get this kind of this soulless, frightened look, because even if they weren't raised in an area where if you said the wrong word, you and your family could be imprisoned, their parents and their grandparents were. And so the patterns of behavior and speech come down. So, for example, in the Czech Republic, Czech people speak very quietly, and they do not talk about their private lives, because in generations they can point to over there who are still alive, there are people who they know who said the wrong things, and them and their whole families were imprisoned. So there's this theory issue, as Piero said, it's not a video game. The utopianism can only survive when people are dumb and immature, because when you grow up and you've seen the world, you're like, well, okay, that's a load of horse shit. The story I've been fed about how the world works or could work is nonsense. But you don't get that without real world experience. And I think this is being motored by people who just don't have any real world experience. They couldn't do to say the stupid fucking things that they say.
Yeah. I've had people call me, like an 1890s kind of man that, cook the dinner, bitch, and put it on the table, like this kind of shit, right? And this is obviously hyperbole in a mischaracterization and an over-aggressive one. There's still some truth to it, though, and I think there's a lot there with old school masculinity, obviously, and these things are very good. I'm literally wearing a hat that says 100% toxic masculinity. But I know that the people saying that shit to me, they haven't traveled the world. They haven't even traveled to a single other country. And I think I have something being delivered if you guys hear any money in the background. Some probiotics I bought off Amazon. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Amazon. Or Amazon sucks, but whatever. Anyway, the point is that people, characterizing me in this ridiculous way, like some super abusive guy wants to just beat the shit out of his wife, which is absurd. They've never traveled to a single other country in their life. They know nothing about other nations. They've literally never left America except on a cruise ship, stuffing their face with whatever the fuck. I've traveled a lot more than most Americans. I've traveled to, Poland and stuff. I've traveled to like 25, 26 countries throughout my 20s and 30s. And like, I know that there's other parts of the world. I've been to Sweden. I've been to the UK. I've been to Germany. I've been to Poland. Like, it's the other outside of America is different. And I love in particular places like Poland that are anti-communist and anti-feminist. But yeah, it's just like you're saying, they have no fucking idea. And you know that, and they're looking at you spouting this shit. And it's like, you are a child. Like, you're an adult, but really you're a child. Like, you're so ignorant. You don't even know that your own ignorance. You don't even have a beginning of awareness of it. They're just spouting the shit at you. It's like, fucking, it's just kind of end rant, but it's pissing me off. Yeah. I can see the wheels turning for Jack here.
Oh, no, I mean, that is a little bit of a function of Americans, I think, a little bit, because
baby talk, right?
But I mean, just generally a bit with not traveling. I mean, because our country's so big,
yeah,
and like for, if you live in Europe, going to the next country is like me going to Nevada, like that's, like we're traveling, but like in the same distance, but it does create some isolation. And that's what I said, like the friend that I cut off, one of the things that, when we were discussing this guy, we're like, man, I wish he had left his hometown just a few times. He needed to have a few other experiences with other kind of people, and he wouldn't be so easily swayed with what he's reading, because he's just reading and that's all he gets. And he's stuck in this, and he's in this small town, which is pretty nice, but like, and he's just not getting a lot of other information. And I think that is true. You're getting a lot of people, like you said, who just haven't had enough experiences with other people to realize. I mean, like, I imagine it's the same. You have people who are in San Francisco who, hate everyone in the middle of the country, and they've never been there.
Yep.
Like, because those people are very nice generally, and like I said, too nice, and that's the problem. But the thing is that they hate those people based on this external information, but they don't really have an experience with it. And the same thing. There's like country people who are like New York City, and they've never been anywhere, and so I think I've traveled around. I've lived in a bunch of places in America. And so, I feel like I benefit from having that experience of living in different places and seeing how things really are versus how you think they are. Yeah. I never liked traveling that much because I was like, I'd rather move somewhere. Because, it's like, I think a lot of Americans, because the ones who have had travel and, who are wealthy, and a lot of the, wealthy progressives are very well traveled, and they go to all these countries.
That's because they're going to Saudi Arabia, getting the sheiks are taking shits on them for money and stuff.
Well, there's that. That's probably just strippers, but like a
lot of them, man.
I mean just
that's called being a model today. That's being the model is
probably, yeah. But I mean, like those people. But yeah, you go to Switzerland for a week to a resort town, and it's wonderful. Everything there must be wonderful. And the same thing, you're going to go to a resort. You're going to go to London or something like that, and you have this great experience when they go to all the fashionable stores, they go out to fashionable restaurants, and they have this experience. And they're like, things are so much better there, but they don't have a real perception of what's happening in the country as a whole. They're just like, they went and had a nice time and a nice vacation, and therefore they think that that's a wonderful place. And they don't see the underbelly of anything or what's going on.
They're
infants.
This is, I think, to paraphrase, I think Richard Heinlein, a man has to be many things. It has to be a poet, a warrior, a lover, a scholar, a monk. We have to be complete so many things, and this is hard work. And the school system doesn't push for that. The rulers want, I could paraphrase one of your fantastic humorist of the 70s, the name escapes me, who said, you want to train people just enough so that they can operate the machine, but not too much so that they start to question the system and think by themselves. You must think by yourself, and this is what you need to strive in life. And usually you get to that point around 40, around 50. Hence, putting the voting age should be probably 40, 45, not sooner. But and I think society would work very better with the voting age to be 45. But roughly, it takes effort, and this is what I believe we all of us and many others who watch us, we strive. We want to teach our children and our peers, but not our enemies, not people we don't care about. We want to keep our tribes educated, well trained for everything. And it's hard. Life has never, and today's world is so easy. We have the power of gods. We can travel, we can have warm water, heating in winter, cool in the summer. I mean, we have lives that are incomparable. Alexander the Great was shit compared to us.
Look at us right now, Piero. We're 4 different men across the world talking instantly with almost zero problems. It's amazing.
And yet it's hard because the fundamentals are hard. And where Alexander the Great was immense compared to us was that through his childhood and through his education, and with Aristotle as a teacher, and has a bastard shit father who pushed him to be an asshole, and it was tough, and they had to fight, and they had to tame horses, and they had to wrestle, and they probably got worse things done to them by some of their peers. But the guys learned, and they became incredible men, incredible people. And we have everything to find the right balance. And yet we keep inventing new mistakes. We keep doing new errors. And so this is still hard. Life is still hard, and as it should be, as it is.
Yeah, our battles are difficult. Yeah, I mean, look at what just went down in America. I think, the only two things I've seen really positive in the past 10 years of American politics are Ron Paul running for office in 2008 and 2012, hardcore, and then Donald Trump, which I think was an evolution of that. Outside of that, it's been extremely negative. But these were fights. These were hard fights, and Ron Paul did not win his fights. He didn't have enough relationships and power and money and whatever. Trump won his fight in 2016, but in 2020 he was unable to win this fight. But these are the fights of our lives, and losing these is putting us, like you're saying, on a track for inevitable collapse, civil war, major clashes, Afghanistan style or whatever. And it's not going to be fun. You know, it's going to be sad. And maybe the outcome will be positive in the end. Maybe it will be beneficial, but
We both together. It'll be sad and fun.
yeah, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, watching some of it go down at the end here, like Wall Street Bets trying to bankrupt these hedge fund billionaires, that was pretty amusing. That was awesome. bunch of they call themselves apes and just retards and stuff, and they loved it, and I think they did real damage. Yeah, it was pretty great.
Just tagging on, can I just tag on something to what Piero said there, that one of the things that makes life now hard, and this is back to the psychological elements of it, is there's so much data that we have to process. So much data. We're probably, you know, we would process in a day what the average medieval peasant would process in a fucking lifetime. Or, sorry, not process, but we're exposed to an amount of information a day that they would be exposed to in a lifetime. Imagine there's no book. There's one book. It's the Bible, and you don't even have it. It's in the church. You have to go in there. And by the way, it's written in fucking Latin or ancient Greek, or, you know, and you can't even read it. So we're exposed to a lot, and that's enormously stressful. And I think, just tying together a point that Jack made earlier with what Piero's just said, it's easier to fall into ideological possession. And that's what it is. It's a fall. It's a collapse. You go, this is hard. I have to do this. I have to do this. I know. I'll go the white route. Oh, now I know who I am. Oh, fuck. What a fucking relief. And that's you taking yourself off the hook. You now have, what's the question? What's the answer? Do you have a tribe that backs you up? Do you have a way of refuting enemy accusations? Yes. It's boil in the bag solution. What a relief.
You have who's to blame.
Perfect.
You already have that figured out. You're like, yeah.
It's prescribed. How wonderful. What a wonderful fucking luxury. You lazy bastards who do that. Stay in the fight. It's hard. It's a pressure. You have to think. You have to study history. You have to study culture. Stay in the fight. Don't give up. Don't just, oh, I'll pick this team. Fuck it. You're laying down, man. You think that you've joined a particular group in the battle, but you haven't. You just checked out. The only battle is that on the front line is figuring this out. And we're using history as much as we can to learn. But I think we all intuit that this thing that we're facing is truly novel. This is a novel threat. And we're going to need a new solution to this, or we will be looking at what will become imminently the descent of the species. And I don't think it's too much to say that. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that.
Yeah, basically a collapse into worldwide communism that results in, depopulation, genocide, gulags, endless high-tech tyranny, the next dark ages. That I think is a real possibility. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned psychological collapse, and I was thinking about that, Richard, when Piero was talking. But so in your view, is the rise of totalitarianism in any nation or any geography, is that a form of psychological collapse to this kind of ideology and parasitic?
I think we can track it. Like as we said before, there's usually like a civil war or a pandemic or massive amounts of hunger and oppression that goes on for decades. Things have to be bad, and then we talk as though we're very complicated creatures, but we're not. We just want a solution. Just give me a way out. And look, the average person, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, it's just not that fucking bright. And they're not that fucking motivated either. They're not going to read the books. Most people can't even be asked to open up another tab on Google and fucking look it up on Wikipedia. They'll ask somebody else in the comments. That's how lazy the average person is. So I have sympathy for that. I have a kind of compassion for the fact that, yeah, most people just can't cope with the stress, and they really just want a leader to follow. So we talk about history like, oh, Nazism was terrible, Stalinism was terrible, and we're all hiding from this dark truth that we want leadership. We want answers. Yes, it's terrible in hindsight, and if people knew what they were getting ahead of time, they wouldn't have gotten into that abusive relationship, but they didn't. They didn't. They saw the shiny catalogue, as Jack said. There's no there, but the there looked fucking cool. We were going to be the heroes of history. We were going to be the guys. And then a few years later, you are the worst of the worst and a stain that can never be removed as long as humanity has history books. And that's in the space of what, 6 years, 5 years that happened in the case of Germany. So I sympathize, but it is inexcusable. Anthony, I have to let a girl in. I'm going to go off for a second, then I'll be back.
Okay, that's cool. I got no problem with that, dude.
I didn't think you would.
Can I bounce off of what he
Absolutely.
said? Yep. I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a second.
Yeah, do it.
Imagine you're Mark Zuckerberg, and you have built your entire career watching people, all these stupid people that catalog the minutia of their stupid lives. everything that he just said, you're Mark Zuckerberg, and you basically have the whole world spread before you of the mass of stupid humanity is your job, that you're watching all of this every day. Do you think he just got super bitter and went full Thanos and was just like, you know what? Someone needs to lead these fools. Like, they're ridiculous. I mean, I could see the psychology there for someone, because, you're dealing with dudes who have like genius level IQ and whatever, and you're just watching, like, look at these people. Like, they can't run themselves.
I've thought about this too, actually, and I agree with you there. And maybe it's related to absolute power corrupts absolutely, that old saying. Because I've thought about, like, someone like Bill Gates, for example, is another guy like Zuckerberg. Bill Gates is obviously not dumb. He's intelligent. He's extremely powerful. And, he talks a lot about depopulation or kind of overpopulation, whatever the fuck all this crap. It's all genocidal garbage as far as I'm concerned. He's a psycho. Yeah. But it's like you're saying, though, like, he sees at a very high level with whatever, access to information that he has, which I'm sure is huge, on level with the state leader, of a major nation. I think he just wants to kill everyone. And from his perspective, that probably makes a lot of sense. Like, these genocidal maniacs that get in positions of power, it's because we see the frustration almost horizontally, our fellow middle classians, so to speak, or what's left of them. And it's frustrating, and we think they're dumb, and they are dumb and lazy a lot of the time. I don't want them to die. I want them to, make positive choices in their life and get smarter, more educated, and think more independently for themselves. But at the level that Bill Gates and Zuckerberg are at, they just want to kill everyone. They see these sheep and like, oh, we can fleece them for all the money and the taxes and the labor, and just take all their shit and then kill them, and then control what's left. Piero?
That's quite true. And in fact, what you see is how much land they are buying to Bill Gates has bought a lot of land in North America to produce food, because he probably knows that this is where the power is going to be. There is, however, a big flaw in that plan of theirs, is that whereas the mob, the organized crime, has power, is in the faithfulness and the fidelity of their own. If you're the mafia boss, or if you're the people who are running for you are your brothers, your cousins, your close childhood friends, perhaps, not strangers. And this power might not enable you to run and build a big software company, or to run a social network and have billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars. But your brother and your cousin is probably not going to betray you easily. However, some of those billionaires, in times of crisis, I don't know if they are really realizing that everything they own and everything they have is at the mercy of their bodyguard.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
A massive flaw in their plan. And if you allow, can I shamelessly plug my recent novel, my recent book? I wrote a book set in Italy in the 1920s, 30s, and in Germany in the 1940s. It's kind of a novelized story of my grandfather who ended up in a prison camp in Germany. And to make a very long story short, what I'm trying to show philosophically in the book, if you read through between the lines, and the book is translated in English, it's available in English, it's called Giuseppe, which was his name, is that you do end up sometimes into the crunching of history taking little people, little workers. He was working in mines in the mines of north of Italy, and he was doing his life, going to the, seducing girls on the weekends, dancing and all that stuff. And then suddenly you get caught by the rise of the fascist regime, the wars that Italy participated in. There was in Africa, in Spain, and then of course World War II, and eventually, and I explain how he ended up in camps in Germany with just along British and American and French other prisoners of war, and the suffering, mental and physical, that these guys in those times had to go through, and he mingles with Russians and Polish, and the kind of oppression is we still don't have that, fortunately. But what I try to show is that at some point in your mind, you have to say no. You have to say, okay, I will not die. I will not be a slave. I will revolt. I will run away. I will go back home to what is important, family, friends. I will go through war, through civil war, through bombed cities, through walking. He walked by foot from North Germany to Italy. He walked back. That was he was proud of that. And the difficult times of those area, if we take the chance to learn, if we take the chance to read, have a lot of value for our generation and the younger people that listen to us, because it shows the fortitude, the resiliency that is in all of us. We all have this potential. We need training. We need to be aware of it. We need to learn about it. And it is part of our duty as humans, as human beings, for our self-respect, to not be slaves, first of all, of our own bad instincts, laziness, watching TV, eating bad food. And we all, to some extent, fall into that once in a while, and sometimes often. I love food. I eat too much. I need to control myself. This is my main problem. But other people is cigarette, other people is drugs, other people is too much sex, if that thing can be a reality. I'm not sure. But things like that, or it can be, narcissism. Women who, for money, show the butts on the internet for the whole world. Could there be a problem after a few years doing that? Well, they will find out. So all of this, again, we are trying to, reinvent things that wisdom and tradition had consolidated over hundreds of thousands of years of culture. And now we have thrown everything away and we are kind of improvising. No, this is going to be a disaster. And we have to learn from the history. And it's not far. It's in this case, it's my grandfather. It's not far in the past. We have, and as Richard said, and I've traveled and worked a lot in Eastern Europe. They remember very vividly how it was 30 years ago, when if you say something wrong, you could have, in some cases, jail or big problems, or simply disappear. And in some milder cases, you would not get the jobs or promotions, or you would not get the apartment you requested to the government. They had ways to punish you, even in a peaceful way, for the least severe regimes, but they remember. And so we need to learn and keep remembering. Look at the Jewish community, how they keep remembering and hammering at every holiday, every dinner, every time about the pogroms, the Holocaust, whatever, real or imagined or exaggerated, it doesn't matter. They remember that it's hard and it's tough and they have to be on their toes and be nimble and be able to move away. Okay, that's an interesting approach, and we all need to do that as well. Okay, that was my ramble.
No, it really inspires an idea that it's not the first time I've had it, but it brings it back to mind. Maybe Richard can comment on this. So we've been talking about and hammering on laziness and sloth and psychological collapse, narcissism, these things. The one thing we haven't really talked about is arrogance. And when you mention the abandonment of tradition that we see so brazenly today, that was condensed and compressed and has its own momentum for thousands of years, it even reminds me, I've thought about this in my personal life, people from my childhood and high school and college and whatnot that watch my Instagram, these normies, so to speak, they see me post these things, bashing feminism and, promoting masculinity, toxic masculinity, 100% toxic, all theyese things. They're sometimes shocked, which is not that surprising. What is stunning to me, though, and it's linked, I think, to their ignorance, like with travel and this and that and all that, is the arrogance they have that, for the first time in history, they're abandoning gender roles at like lightning speed. And for the previous couple 100,000 years of our species, these things were not abandoned. They were like very, very normal. They look at me like I'm nuts for saying that, women should, prioritize being a mother. They should be in the home, most of the time, right? I don't even think this is a controversial statement, but to them, it's like absolutely radical. And it's like, no, the reality is the opposite, like everything else today. They're the radicals. Having your first child at 39 years old is absolutely abnormal in the context of our history as a species. And being in the workplace and being an attorney as a female at 35, like this is all brand new shit in our species. And the absolute arrogance to just die, it's like diving into a pool that's like shallow and you're breaking your neck. That's what I see these people doing, women and men both. The soy boy men, these pathetic pussies, and then the women who are like these masculine green-haired weirdos. It's like they're all just diving into a pool that's 2 feet deep and they're breaking their necks. And they're like, you're crazy, just dive right in, bro. It's like, no, you are insane. So Richard, do you have any comments from a psychological perspective and from your element to work with arrogance? Now it's linked to what we're seeing.
I have lots, and I've prepared a 2-hour-long lecturette for everybody to enjoy. So fucking strap in, kids.
All right.
I'll keep it brief. What you just mentioned there is classic from Jungian psychology. It's anima possession and animus possession. The men, generally speaking, are possessed by a non-noble version of their own femininity that they're actually in denial of. They've actually lost connection with. The women are possessed by a non-noble, toxic version of their own masculinity that they've lost contact with, they've disavowed. And so, you see these things play out. When it comes to arrogance, if we're going to bring it to the realm of narcissism and personality disorders, we think of narcissists as having very strong egos and being very ego-driven. It's not true. They actually have a very strong superego, but no ego boundaries whatsoever. And when you see narcissism playing out, not just in an individual, but in a collective, that's why you get this everybody, everything, all the time attitude. There's never a no, which is why what Jack was saying earlier, the cure to this is no. A no is a boundary. What they're doing is boundarylessness. And there is this, it's beyond arrogance. It's magical thinking. We can do anything whenever we want just by saying that that's what we are and that's what we can do. And it's like, no, fuckface, you can't. You can't fly. You can try if you like, but you'll only get one go.
I can be a woman today. I have a penis, but I'm a woman,
Right.
Like,
so, you can just declare yourself, and it's everybody, everything, all the time. No boundaries, no limits. And I always look at this and I'm like, this isn't, if there's anything noble about revolutions or anything that's vaguely Marxist, it's that people who are oppressed by elites and are raped and tortured and used and enslaved should rise up and overthrow those elites. That's the potentially noble side of a revolution. This is not that. This is just pure privilege. This is boundaryless privilege. And people who are spoiled into insanity, where they think they can have everything. Nobody gets everything. And then when they don't, they're really angry and they want to find somebody to blame. I'm sorry, but this is the mentality of a 3-year-old. I have compassion to a degree with where they're coming from. But when we get into this, I want what I want. And if I'm not getting it, somebody needs to die, or somebody needs their business ruining, or somebody needs to be cancelled and silenced forever. I'm afraid I don't have any time for that. It's evil. I'll put a moral spin on it, which psychologists aren't supposed to. It's evil, plain and simple, and they should be stopped. And why are we as a collective allowing this? These people always existed. They've always been there, but they were always fringe and they were always politely ignored. Now, for some reason, this fringe attitude has become mainstream. Mm-hmm. And even the president of the United States of America is pandering to this hot garbage, and it's nonsense. It's total fucking nonsense. And what I don't understand is when people spout this stuff, they don't see that they're digging their own graves. You are digging your own grave when you repeat woke pseudo Marxist or half Marxist ideology, you're digging your own grave. It's only a matter of time.
It's probably like neo Marxist. It's just new age Marxist.
Yeah. Is it even really Marxist? I'll leave that for the Marxists to debate over. It probably isn't. Whatever it is, though, this sort of wokest thing, it is a snake eating its own tail. It dooms itself. So even as you take a step in that direction, you're dooming yourself. What was Biden's, one of his first statements was that he was going to help businesses, but he mentioned every ethnicity except for white businesses.
Oh yeah, all the women businesses and all the minority businesses, but no men and no white men, especially no white people.
It's lunacy. What an incredibly irresponsible thing for a president.
I don't even think it's legal. It's illegal. Not that matters anymore. But
and at that point, I just have to say, okay, we're in a really dangerous situation here, because when you are picking out members of the population, if he picked out members of the population, he said, well, I'll be helping white men first, we would all be jumping up and down and screaming, rightly so. You should just help businesses, mate. You should just help businesses. Don't worry what the people have in their fucking underwear or what color skin they have. It's none of your fucking business. Just help them get back to work, you fuck.
I mean, even if he said something,
hearing him say it.
Even if he said something more specific, like we're going to help all the Asian businesses and none of the black businesses, even something like that would be just like, it would be.
It's insane. It's got nothing to do with anybody. Yeah. What your genetic heritage is nothing to do. What meat plumbing you have as a business owner is totally irrelevant. And making it relevant is puerile. It's immature. That's all it is. It's beneath the dignity of his office. It's nothing to do with him. Nothing at all. They're American citizens and they're business owners. End of story. That's who you should be helping. And to divide them up like that is a disgrace. That wasn't a very psychological point that I made. That was a bit.
No, I'm all about it, man. I think a lot of psychologists are moving. The better ones are moving in your direction because things are escalating out of control.
It's insane. Psychology is being abused at the moment. Yeah. They're using psychological language to further their nonsense agenda. That's why I'm pulling back from it, mate. I'm like, I'm not talking psychology. I'll talk philosophy, because at any point in philosophy, I can put it back on you, back on the listener, back on the person asking me a question. And I'll say, well, let's use the Socratic method. What do you think about that? Psychology presents itself as this medicalized solution to things. And it's easy to misuse psychology. It's not so easy to misuse real philosophy. You can misuse ideology, but you can't really use philosophy. It's not so easy to misuse philosophy as a weapon to beat people over the head with. So yeah, I think we will see more psychologists wanting to push away from that and be like, hang on, you're misusing these terms.
Well, I think what's happening is we're seeing, and this has been going on for my entire time as an entrepreneur. I'm in my 15th year now being a business owner. And I think what we're seeing with psychologists and et cetera, is we're seeing people, especially men, basically forced through the escalation that is ever increasing and exponential. They're being forced out of their profession. Like I started as not even an entrepreneur, like kind of just a hobby organizer of events, because I wanted to basically get better with women and improve myself. I wanted to then bang more women. And a bunch of other young guys were like, hey, that sounds like a great thing. That, of course, has escalated and snowballed into a million different, very positive things for my life and for the manosphere and for millions of men that watch our speeches and videos. But it's also like, I didn't start out wanting to fight a culture war.
You started out with the most primitive of drives that actually is the drive that makes the world go around.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to, I wanted to get laid. I wanted to improve my social skills and dating skills and sexual skills. And a lot of that just, focused on pretty basic stuff like, organizing physical events for men, selling tickets, and then editing videos and stuff and publishing them. So it wasn't, it didn't have anything really to do with like, let's fight a culture war and save the West and the world's collapsing. Yeah. It was like, let's get laid. Like, and then it just keeps escalating out of control.
Well, this was the thing that Yuri Bezmenov says, wasn't it? He was like, if you want to demoralize a nation, you politicize everything, and you can't do anything now without touching politics. Do you remember 10 years ago when nobody really gave a shit about politics? I barely remember it, because everything is politics now. You can't. Everything you touch comes back sticky with some political connotation or other. It's a
Hey, I've
nuisance.
noticed that in America, anyone who's apolitical, that segment of the population has been dwindling because everyone's getting polarized. They're swinging to submission and psychological collapse with the left, or they're swinging towards anything pro-America and pro-freedom, which is, I think, it's ultimately a good thing, even if it's going to have conflict. One thing that also comes to mind, I was mentioning earlier, is we're talking about civil wars that precede communism, which is very consistent. China, Russia, Vietnam. I'm sure there's even more examples. What's interesting is in America, I think we're seeing that happen, and people have been discussing this for years, especially last year. It was a big year that it was discussed on Twitter and the internet and all that. But it's like they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually I think there will be pushback, a big no. And that, so if this, what's interesting is if you look at Vietnam, China, and Russia, you didn't have a well-armed, especially with a founding myth like Jack talks about here in his books. We have a well-armed middle-class population that's the most well-armed group of people in the world, I think, ever. Switzerland is close, but it's much smaller.
No, if there was a civil war in America, mate, I think I said this to you in an interview last year, it would be very short and very decisive.
Yeah, I hope so.
It wouldn't be a long-running thing. There's one side outnumbers, is out-trained, is outskilled. I mean, look at how many vets you have just living in your country.
But it's so that's kind of what I'm saying, though, is who knows how it'll go, and if it does happen. I'm not advocating. I'm all for peaceful protesting. But whatever happens, happens. I don't have any control over this, right? And I'm definitely not going to start it. I'm not going to be that guy.
We can encourage people to try and meet in the middle and to try and see each other as human beings and to try and keep talking. But that may be a a defunct effort at this point.
Yeah, like voting. Like voting was a way. Voting is a method. Like there's actually a book and a movie, obviously, that focus on the Starship Troopers. It's actually a great book, and even the movie they talk about voting and what it really is, which is political force. When you vote, you want someone to manage the courts, the judges, and the men with guns to physically act different in real life and do different things. So when you vote, you want a man with a gun to come do things differently to me and my neighbors and my community, like collect more taxes. Like I don't have a choice in that. And if I don't pay them, they're going to arrest me at gunpoint. And if I don't want to get arrested, they're going to kill me. Even if it goes down Waco style and it just escalates out of control. But now they're shutting that off. It's like they're shutting off free speech. They're shutting off every valve that you can resolve things peacefully. And it seems to be on purpose. But my main point here, though, is that if things do escalate to civil war in America before a communist revolution, this is a big, big difference that was not available in Russia, and it was not available in China, and it was not available in Vietnam. We have a history of our founding myth, so to speak, our founding ethos was literally shooting, sorry, Richard, but British people.
How dare you, sir? I'm still hurt.
You fucking.
We're ready to take it back if you don't bloody sort yourselves out.
Trauma from that, like this.
Yeah,
it's me right here, Jack. Right here.
But that's how I see things going. It's going to be. There's no guarantee. I mean, I agree with you, Richard. I think that's how things would go, but there's no certainty. There's no guarantee with that. But if things do go differently, maybe that'll be how they go different. The Civil War will kick off. The communists will try to make their move, as they have been increasingly, and then it just backfires and blows up in their face. That would be nice. And that's something, again, though, that wasn't really possible, I think, in Russia and China and Vietnam. They didn't have a George Washington to look to. They didn't have 1776, and they didn't have 500 million guns.
There's also another big difference from Russia in 1917 or any other country in the past and now. One is supply chains. We have 99% of the people living in cities depending on 1% of people producing the food. This has never happened before. So the supply chains, you have 2 weeks to live, at best, before you have bad water, no electricity, no food anymore. And the supply chains are easy to cut. You just need the people driving the trucks not wanting to go in the city infested by crazy people. I'm sure this almost happened in Portland. I don't know, Jack, what was your feedback? But at some point, you don't want to drive your truck to deliver a supermarket if crazy people assault you and because patriarchy. And things like that. Although the other big difference is the quality of human beings. I'm taking mentally and physically. when you look at college students, university students of 1914 in the trenches in Europe or in the fields of Europe, you have incredibly physically fit students, of course, intellectually fit as well. But you have people who were well-fed, and I'm really meaning well, not in the negative sense. They were fit. They walked every day to back and forth. They had extremely fit, and the mind. I mean, to stay 4 years in the trenches and to go through what our grandfathers used to go through. Today, people get have microaggressions. In terms of mental strength, it's extremely weak. And I'm not talking about everyone. Of course, there are veterans from many wars who show that there are still strong people around, but it's not the majority anymore. And this is what happened with comfortable civilization. And of course, the people who fear microaggressions and get offended because they mispronounce their gender or name, I don't think they're going to fare psychologically well in difficult times. And to go back to today's situation, after 1 year of this Chinese cat thing that we cannot even name, I'm sure Richard can confirm that, but you start to have warnings from psychiatrists and psychologists across the world. For sure, I've read some reports here in Switzerland about teenage suicides doubling last year, and nervous breakdowns increasing dramatically. I think it was plus 40% on the workplace. People just have nervous breakdown because they can't meet people anymore, because they can't stand being alone. And you have violence. We are in countries where we don't have a lot of violence, and suddenly we have random violence with guns. People going into some government office and shooting people. This has never happened, or very seldom happened. And we've had 2 last month in January in France, for example. Yeah. So this mental instability, because of a small crisis compared to World War II or World War I, is at the beginning phase. And this is probably why you will see probably governments saying, it's over, there's no more sanitary crisis, everyone go back to normal, because they went too far. And they start to see some result. But it's not the point of the discussion, I know, but the point is that we are seeing much weaker people physically and mentally, which is everything we stand against, by the way, in these communities. Mm-hmm. We want our friends, our peers, our family to be stronger mentally and physically, not to go to war, but just because this is the way to be a man, and I presume a woman as well in their own way, and we want good for them, for us, and for our peoples in general, and from all religions, all races. We want the best for everyone.
Sure.
But we are not in that trend in the society. We are getting weaker and weaker. And again, remember the discussion we had at the very beginning. Natural selection is not kind on the weak.
Well put. And speaking of weakness and strength, you mentioned women in their own way, and I agree with that strongly. I was thinking just the other day, even yesterday, about it. Just something I saw on Twitter, and basically, for a woman today to be a slut is the easiest thing in the world. It's an exact sign of a weak woman, because it's fitting into the crowd and behaving like everyone else, the other 90% of women. A strong woman today is the opposite of that, someone who resists this degenerate, fucked up lifestyle that has become so normal for them. And the weakness, though, is just being this massive slut, which is like it's the new thing for them. So to be weak is to be a slut today for women, and to be strong is to be chaste.
I'll say one more thing, and then I have to go, because I have my 4 kids who are starving and I need to feed them. You mentioned about women being a slut. Now, throughout history, women did not want to be perceived as sluts at all, because it's a very bad reproductive strategy, because obviously no one wants to stay with you if you have children, if you have a reputation of a slut. Today, of course, government can help you to survive through money and through the divorce laws and so on and so on. But you have to remember that in the big cities of the world, before the 19th century, let's say, before the middle of the 19th century, cities like London, Dublin, Naples, where we have data, half of the woman population were prostitutes.
Wow.
And this is because life was so tough and it was so difficult to live, especially in the cities where you don't produce food, that most women who didn't rely on strong men to protect them and provide for them so that they could take care of the children on their own. So the evil patriarch, the evil toxic masculinity, when it was not around, they had to revert to go back to the basic means of survival for women, which is trading sex for food.
That sounds exactly like today.
And interestingly, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to say you all. I have to go. Thanks a lot.
I really appreciate your time. Hang on, before you go, I had one specific question I wanted to ask you. Sorry to interrupt you. Then I'll let you go, I swear. Your book got me thinking about debt, national debt, massive amounts of debt. Obviously, it's about economic collapse. But I've been looking for a figure and I can't find it. And it's the real total debt for America and the real total debt for the West and the real total debt for the world. These are numbers that you just can't find when you include unfunded liabilities. Like I think in America, for example, it's between 200 and 300 trillion. But what about the West and what about the world? Is it over a quadrillion? These are crazy numbers, right?
You probably can add them up but you have to add. You have to dig a little bit what is in the balance sheet of banks that is considered toxic, and they put it in a different balance sheet because they can do whatever they want now. Accounting rule, who cares? But the debt is still there. The liability is still there. If you add the companies, the banks, the credit cards, the student debts, the government, the local governments, the states, you end up with numbers that are so huge that they defy the mind and they certainly defy the reason of ever being able to be reimbursed. So the name of the game is not planning to have growth to reimburse the money. This is one of the reasons why they have zero or negative interest rates, because it's the only way. As soon as you go back to any positive interest rates, the whole system explodes. These numbers become infinite and means nothing anymore. However, they are still based on one reality, is that we need food, we need energy to move stuff around, which is oil and stuff. We need electricity, and that is not limitless. That cannot be expanded forever just with magic. So sooner or later, and I believe we are right at the time this is going to happen, we're going to have structural fallings on these fundamentals, which is food production, food delivery, all based on energy, mostly oil. So be careful when that happens, because when that happens, the whole house of cards falls down and collapses. And then you're back to basics. Doesn't mean it's everywhere at the same time. It doesn't mean it's brutal everywhere at the same time. Some cultures react good. Look at Japan. Some cultures react less good. So be careful. But it cannot last forever. It's just physics.
Infinite debt has a finite timeline, sounds like. Yeah. Piero, thank you for your time. I appreciate the answer and being on the show. Everyone make sure to pick up his book, Survive the Economic Collapse. His other books available on Amazon and probably bookstores. You can check it out. Awesome book.
It's in reprint right now. So
what?
It's being reprinted. So wait a few weeks. Who knows? But anyway, I'm around. Take care.
Thank you, Piero.
Cheers, Pierre.
Ciao.
Love that guy. Yeah, the debt thing, his book got me thinking about it, and I realized I couldn't even find basic numbers for how much debt the world was in. How much debt America.
Strange that, isn't it, Anthony? That you can't find those fucking numbers.
I think the world is over a quadrillion. It's somewhere between 500 trillion and a quadrillion. I think it could be more, but it's really insane, and it's amazing you can't even find like a basic even like InfoWars and shit don't have like a number on this. Like in America, it's 200 to 300 trillion. It's somewhere in that range, which is crazy.
I wanted to know specifically what America owed China, just China, and I couldn't get a sensible.
It's trillions. Yeah, it's honestly small though compared to what as big as and threatening as it sounds. Like the unfunded liabilities are the major thing. The 27 trillion that's all nonsense. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's a big number, but compared to there's like 150 trillion for Social Security alone or something. Wow. Like, it's never going to get paid. It's the checks are going to start bouncing eventually, like soon, a couple of years from now and shit. That's probably, but who knows? Probably war will break out before then. So who knows?
Oh, don't worry. The communists will deal with that. They'll eradicate money completely, and then they'll solve the problem.
Yeah.
I also have to go soon, mate. Sorry about that.
No, but it's been over 2 hours. I think we should probably wrap up. It's so much fun talking to you guys. I just wanted to go on like the debt forever. You know? Jack, if we can close that. Richard, thank you for your time. Everyone check out his channel and of course his course at 21 University. It's super awesome. It's the best course in the world for anything, as well as psychology and healing as a man from trauma. Very useful stuff. And his speech at 21 Convention. Check it out.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Jack, now it's just me and you, one-on-one. If we can close out, I want to hear about your new book. What is going on with this, and how does it fit in the larger context, the universe of Jack Donovan?
Jack Donovan universe. That's like a comic book universe, right? Well, The Fire in the Dark, it actually, everyone will see that and then try and go buy it on Amazon and can't because it's not out yet. That was a pre-press copy. So it'll be out probably early March. I had a lot of order hardcover pre-orders. And when I ship those, then I'll release the rest of the book and the audio book and everything. I'm about halfway through recording the audio book, which is super hard. Wow. Yeah, so I'm working on that, and I want it to be all available at the same time because everybody listens to audiobooks now. That's kind of the thing. But yeah, so it's basically I consider it kind of going back to my roots with the Way of Men and talking about like a solution for like finding out what's always masculine, but in a different way. Like when I went to look at masculinity and answer what is masculinity, I'm like, what is it always and everywhere, and what doesn't change? What's eternal? And with this book, I started out looking at spirituality from a Germanic pagan perspective, but then it quickly got bigger than that. And so it's almost in this sense of like king, warrior, magician, lover, where you're talking about archetypes. I look at really the archetypes of gods that men have had throughout history and what's always the same. And it's like, there always sure is a sky father in every system ever. And why is that? Who would it actually be a patriarch technically? The word comes from that, like Dios Pater. And so I wanted to come up with these three main archetypes. So, it's like a father and a striker, which is always the warrior. There's always a thundering warrior god with lightning and the whole deal, a storm god. And that's the god of war and all that. And then there's always a pastoral god that has to do a little bit more with fertility and the crops and all that kind of stuff. And these are three things that men have always had to carry about. And I brought them back and rooted them in the idea of a fire. And I introduced this, I think, a little bit in a speech at the 21 Convention because I was sketching out the book as I've done a couple times with the 21 Convention. And so, the idea of a fire is the simplest thing in the world, and we can all relate to it. And men have done it all around the world. If they go to a new place, and what's the first? The sun goes down, they build a fire, and they create. What does the fire do? It makes the world around them intelligible. It creates order of its own. Because once the sun goes down, the sun is the solar thing that makes light on the world and makes us understand things or whatever. But the fire is a substitute for the sun in many ways. And so it becomes the substitute thing. It's how we make our world intelligible and create order within it. And you have to defend the order, which is what the warrior does. And what I talked about.
The fire creates a boundary too, right? It creates a perimeter and therefore
exactly. Yeah, it creates its own perimeter. It's a natural thing. Like where the light ends, that's where chaos begins. Mm-hmm. So we, nations need boundaries to exist because then it's not that nation anymore. It's something else. We're talking about boundaries earlier. That's what men do. They create boundaries and order and draw lines. And that's why like I said, we brought up Washington. You said he was in the book, and he's kind of the perfect exemplar, really, that if you really go and look at his biography, he was all these things. He was father of a nation, which is a conceptual thing. Because he didn't have children, which is also interesting. Mm-hmm. But he was really literally like the father of a concept and oversaw the creation of its rules and its guidelines and all these other things. But he got there because he's an ascended warrior. Mm-hmm. He was a warrior who fought his way through that. And then basically it's like all the old mythological stories. Like he killed the evil king and overcame the evil empire, and then started his own order. I mean, it's mythic, and then, but in real life, a lot of times he was like, "Can I just go be a farmer now?" Like he was done with it. He wanted to go back to Mount Vernon and just work on his farm a lot of times, and they sucked him into being president because he was the guy, and so he's just a really good example that pulls all these ideas together. And so I just think it's interesting because when I took King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, a lot of the guys have read that book and so forth, and it's good, and there's a lot of good stuff in it, but it was written from a very feminist, pacifist perspective, and you can see a lot of that in it. And I think that for men who are interested in masculinity, maybe we need to look at it a little bit of a different way.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember reading even books that I think are still pretty good, like The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. I read that at like 17 years old. It was very popular in the pickup artist wing of the manosphere back in the 2000s. And I liked some of it, but there was another part of it that I couldn't quite articulate at 17, 18 years old. And it's that it's very like too soft and pacifist almost. And it's not like a warrior is someone who fucking fights, is how I see it. Whether
warriors make war.
Yeah. And I think I've also read too the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and it's got the similar feel to it. It's too soft, and it doesn't mean the ideas are all wrong. It just means there's a certain attitude or theme to it that I'm not down with, and they missed. And your books don't have that. Your books have the opposite. I think they're intellectually striking. You're a striker as a writer. You're striking with your keyboard and your keys and your pen. It's awesome.
Thunderbolts. But it's exactly. We guys who are on our page, I think, needed something else, something a little bit of different perspective, and so this is my attempt to bring that to the table.
I'm all about it, man. I love your writing, love your work. An absolutely underrated author in the manosphere. The acting secretary of masculinity for the manosphere.
I love that I got that and I didn't even know it. We had a little discussion about it on a sidebar, but I mean, obviously I'll plan to speak about this in broader things when I speak at the 21 convention this year.
Fuck yeah. Looking forward to it, man, having you back once again. 21 Summit, multiple conferences actually going on, but he was speaking at the main legendary event, the 21 convention. There'll also be a fatherhood event, and of course the event for the women to get them back in the kitchen, make women great again. Last question for you, Jack, and then we'll close out. You've had this concept of the gold pill that came out in your newsletter recently. Everyone who's not in your newsletter should go join it, jack-donovan.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk to me, what is the gold pill? Because we got the blue pill, we got the red pill, we got the purple pill, we got the God pill, we got fucking white pill, black pill. There's like 1,000 different fucking pills. But the gold pill is the new hot thing, and I like it a lot. Talk to me about the gold pill. What is the gold pill?
Thanks. Yeah, I just, it's just kind of the ongoing discussion I've been having throughout my newsletters that I've been putting out recently. Because that's how I'm writing for guys now, because, who knows when Instagram is going to be not real for any of us and that kind of thing. So I can write a little bit more directly to my audience. And the gold pill, I got the idea because people are always talking about these golden ages of times when things were better, and that we're in some bad time and some dark age and whatever, and this kind of black pill mentality. And the gold pill is that it's our job to become the men of the golden age. At some point, during the American Revolution, great example. Were we in the dark ages? We're at a dark time. I mean, people were obviously pissed off enough that they fought a long war to change the world. And they had to step up and become the men that now we look back on and be like, wow, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And so the gold pill is just about this is our job, to go become these guys who other men in future generations will be like, I can't believe those guys did that. That's what needed to be done, and they did it, and they stepped up and got it done. And so it's our job to become those guys, not just cry about how it's not the golden age anymore, because that's what I see so much online, and it's so non-productive. It's like make the golden age. Yeah, that's your job. So
these are the things I think about, but I don't articulate them in the way that you do, and I love hearing it, because the feeling, if that's a thing in this sense, I feel these things, but I'm not an author like you. I'm not thinking about them at the level and the rigor that you are constantly. So I love seeing it and hearing it, because that is how I feel and how I think. It's like the meme, you know, strong, you know, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. It's this cycle that everyone talks about, and it's not totally inaccurate, but I have a certain frustration with it. And it's like staying on the cycle is its own black pill. Like, why, if you can observe the cycle, you have the ability to change it. And I think the founding fathers and the whole founding generation, the men who fought in the war, and the women and the men who supported them, they changed history. You're right. They didn't. I don't think that was part of the normal cycle, and that's why the world has changed so much since then. They changed the course of human history, not only American history, but for the whole fucking planet. They changed the cycle. They said no to the cycle, and we're going to up the cycle to a new level. And now it doesn't mean the cycle is completely gone, but they did something about it. And I get the sense that you're of the same opinion about that meme, or similar opinion. Like, I have frustrations with that meme, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes from a poem, because I had to look it up to make sure what I was referencing, as I do. And yeah, I mean, it's a reality, and that is how things work in societies. Obviously, things get too easy. It also reminds me, there's one of my favorite books that I've referenced for years and years and years, is one of those dystopian authors. I'm blanking on the name right now. But
Atlas Shrugged?
What?
Atlas Shrugged?
No. It was a book that it was called now I'm blanking on the whole thing. Now I lost
the Brave New World.
No. It's a less known one. Oh, it's called The Wanting Seed.
Okay.
It's by Anthony Burgess, the guy who wrote Clockwork Orange.
Okay.
And it basically was a society where they were moving towards overpopulation, and so they decided to emasculate the men, and basically they had slogans that were like, "It's sapiens to be homo," and like, you know, basically like have all the guys became really effeminate to fit in with the government, because that's what they wanted, because they didn't want them to reproduce. And you know, dudes would have, like, you know, sex with women on the side because that's what they really wanted to do. And but then they'd have a child, and it would be like bad because they weren't allowed to have it. And but then that can't last that long. And so society falls apart. It goes in this crazy fascist state, and then that can't last either. And so it goes into a next thing. And I won't spoil the end of the book, but it's an interesting solution that they come up with. But in that, they have a similar idea. Like, he takes it up with Catholic philosophers. There's like the Pelagian system, and the Pell phase, and the Gus phase, the Augustan phase. And basically, it's like in one phase, humanity thinks our natures are really good, and that we'll be kind together if we just allow it. And the other side thinks humanity is naturally evil, and we need to like keep tight control of them because they'll get out of control. And in reality, neither of those are actually 100% true, and we're always somewhere in the middle. People are mostly good, but sometimes they're evil, and you know, like, but there goes through a balance. He has the same thing, like it goes through a cycle of phases. Like, we think that people are naturally good, so that we're super nice, and we're kind of in that right now. And then, you know, that's breaking down, and then there's going to be tight authoritarian control, because people are going to get super violent. And then once that's controlled, then it'll go too nice, and it'll go around the circle again. And so there's a lot of cycles like that, and all of them have some use to talk about. But and the one I always talk about, because a lot of my readers like the Kali Yuga, it's like an ancient Hindu thing, which really doesn't reference our society at all. But that there are ages of man, and we're in the downturn and you know, like, all the rules break down and everything falls apart. And you know, it does allow guys to be like we were both saying, like, to get black pilled on it and be like, well, we're in the end phase, everything sucks now, you know, that's just how it is, we're in that spot. And yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's our job to fix that. It's not if you just do that, that's really defeatist and nihilist, and what's the fucking point?
It's not an American attitude either. It's not what we were taught by our founding fathers and our founding generation. It's the opposite of what they taught.
It's not a masculine attitude, and it absolves them of agency. Because if you can't do anything about it, then you don't have to.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's what's happening with a lot of society right now, is that we're seeing that we're ruled by bad people. We're seeing, I mean, that's obvious, I think, if you are okay about looking at it. I mean, if you would ask me 5 years ago, I'd be like, no, half these guys mean well. You know, like, you know, they're mean well, but they're wrong.
How's that going for you? How's that going?
Yeah, I mean, maybe 5 years ago it was true. I don't know, but like right now, no, it's clear. Like they don't actually want to make people healthier. They don't actually want to make the nation stronger. They don't
mask is
that are supposed to be a job. Yeah. I mean, that is no longer a realistic thing to say.
Yep.
But you watch people and they're having cognitive dissonance with it because if they admit that there's something wrong, like very wrong, and that they're in one of these bad times that we read about, like, Russian Revolution or like if we're in one of these bad times in history, then they have to act on it. But if they can sit and say, no, they mean well, they're just wrong.
I think actually what you're referring to, you're mentioning where did it go? Here it is. So you're mentioning cognitive dissonance, and I think that's accurate, but on a much broader scale, I think what we're witnessing is normalcy bias. Yeah. And if they pop the cognitive dissonance bubble, they also pop at the same time, by necessity, the bubble of normalcy bias that we've been living in, that the government doesn't want to kill you and doesn't want to enslave you. And it's like, actually, that's no longer true. They want to put you under house arrest for, it looks like almost a year straight now in some places, which is absolute tyranny. Like, this is not funny. This is totalitarianism.
Yeah, if that's not tyranny, what is?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like it's like the horror stories we would have looked at in, like, with Nazi Germany or like the Soviet Union or whatever, like papers, please, you don't have to go there. Like all the things that we were raised to be like, Hollywood even was telling us were the bad things that happens, and that's what's been happening, Yeah,
and I think it's popping this bubble though is very scary for people. I think it's kind of what you're getting at. It's a very scary thing to say, no, like the governor of my state is actually evil. Someone's controlling them, pushing them, influencing them, or they're just a piece of shit. And they actually want to do me harm, and my neighbors harm, and my family harm. And that's a big step to take I'm long past there, but for the average person going to Walmart, like they don't want to acknowledge this. It's very scary, I think.
Yeah, because then what do you do? That implies, that demands action, because if
demands masculinity is what it demands.
Yeah, it demands masculinity, and it demands. It's like if I'm a man and I now admit to myself, if you're living in California, I mean, if you can rationalize that Gavin Newsom is not a horrible human being, that's just obvious and plain. But if
he even looks like a villain, he looks like
I mean, well, that's I think I wrote in that piece. Like all these people look like. I mean, it's a perfect setup. But yeah, I mean, if you accept the fact that this guy is trying to hurt the people that I love, and he's not just mistaken or making a bad choice, but that he's actively doing something evil that could harm me and my family and all the people that I care about, that demands something from you as a man. And whether, I'm not saying that demands you go out on the street and do whatever, but it demands action, and you have to take steps to move forward, and that becomes a priority then.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing. And I don't think people want to deal with that.
Yeah, saying no takes effort. You have to open your mouth, and you have to think it and say it and speak it in a way that means something. Peaceful protesting, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it's a scary thing, and it's it's frustrating to see people not take those steps, but also there is some empathy there. Like they're actually scared. They're pussies, they lack balls, masculinity, or whatever, testosterone, whatever the cause is, like they're scared. And they're like almost like animals that are frozen, like in a freeze response, Which Richard was.
The question simply like, like if I'm wrong, am I throwing my life away?
Yeah.
If everything that I've been working for my entire life, if this gets better in 3 months, but I'm the guy who, just ruined it for myself. I think that's where a lot of people are. They're like, do we really just lift all the restrictions and everything goes back to normal in spring? Because if that's cool, then we're good. like that we're cool. And they're waiting to see how bad if there's an end. Because once people realize that there's not an end, then the scenario becomes different. But right now, there's still a plausible end for a lot of people. Like I said, I live where we're basically living normal life. Like nothing bad. Like the economy's fine, everything's fine.
I live in Florida. Like I'm going to go to the beach tomorrow, probably. Like even at peak COVID hysteria, Floridians were, guess what? Still at the fucking beach. And it was on the news, and people freak. There was like this Grim Reaper dude, this fucking weirdo, running around yelling at people, but no one cares. Like Florida,
Yeah.
the Florida man meme exists because there's a real, and the Florida woman, frankly, people in the state just have a very like, go fuck yourself kind of attitude, which I love. And I think that's why I have that in my business as an entrepreneur. One of my favorite sayings is go fuck yourself, fuck you. And, in Utah, it's very similar and whatnot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we'll wrap up. I really appreciate your time, man. It's been an awesome show. Super fun. One of the best in a long time. And I look forward to seeing you at 21 Convention later this year. Tickets are not on sale yet, but they will be probably in 3-4 weeks, late this month or early March. And it's going to be a great time, and nothing will stop us, just like 2020. Even peak COVID, we still had a great time in Orlando. You were there. You got to see it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Peace out. I appreciate your time, Jack. Appreciate you guys tuning in live. Hit the like button. I appreciate it. It helps. And leave a comment. It's like hitting the like button 10 times. Comments are helpful anywhere. Share it. And there's also the links in the description to the books and the websites for the speakers. And you can tip, Redman Group, 21 Studios, all those different things. And check out Richard Grandin's course. It is super good, super awesome, very high quality stuff. Everyone, peace out. I'll see you next Saturday. Jack, talk to you soon.
See you later.